Ay, nagtamsak. Thank you. Salamat sa patamsak. Tapos. Ganun pala yun. I see. Saan nga tutog? Paano ba maglagay nito ng put user in time off? Ano ba yun? Hindi ko alam paano mag-moderator ng tao. Wala dito ata. Wala? Ito pala. Ganyan pala. Bakit nandito? Pwede pa dito sa doon. Tapos makita sa taas. Viewers. Viewers. Ano yun? Parang guess yun. Mahangin na. Lucky. Tapos, ano pa? Screen share. Number 2. 1. Share the audio. Ganun pala. Share the audio. Hello, Fondi. Fondi Hub. Ano yun? Pornhub. Joke lang. Salamat po sa pagdaan. Testing lang din to sa STREAMYARD kasi hindi pa ako marunong. Ganun pala yun. So nakita din pala nung pag nag-chat ako. Okay. Tapos. Ano ba to? Tapos. Pa-jacket? Okay, bibigyan kita ng jacket. Saan na ba yun? Ayun. Nahanap rin. Like a bird on a tree. Ayan, may jacket ka na. Fondi, how? Nabigyan ka rin pa si Sir Jess. Ano pa bang kasunod dito? The world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful. Mga mukha lang pala. You and me. I see. Ganun pala. Tapos ganyan, 3. Nabigyan na po kita ng jacket. Ano yun? Patamsak naman dyan. Fondi Hub. Tapos, pag-stop sharing. Saglit lang nga talaga. Ito din ba dun? Paano yun? Ang dami naman nun. Sorry guys, testing lang to, hindi ko pa alam. Ano to? Green screen. Ito yung gusto namin na bahay sa Pilipinas. Sige po, ingat po kayo, Fondi. Ingat po sa work. Ano ba to? Sino pa ba? Nakulot na yung buhok ko. Tapos saglit lang, tingnan ko. Hindi, ganun lang din pala yung makikita. Isa lang din pala. Ganun? Hindi, nakikita din pala. Ganun pala yun. Mas maganda pa rin pala yung yung zoom. Maganda lang to dahil sa streaming. Tapos, ay, ano yung back kami. Bye po, ingat po. Tapos pag double click, makikita. I see. High-tech pa itong STREAMYARD na to ah. Ganun pala yun. Kaya pala, maganda rin naman pala. Ano ba kasi mo? I-view ko kaya yung LS ko. Kung ano. Tapos, iyak nga. Stop muna.
It's streaming, then it's actually live. Well, I'm Val Campbell, and this is the Saturday morning show with myself and Brad Krantz. We are here again. We made it another week, Brad.
Yes, we did. An interesting week on a lot of levels, for sure.
And that's why we're here and why we're excited to talk to Paul Carpenter. And Paul, Brad asked me a question. He said, how do you know Paul? And I thought, how do I know Paul? Did we connect through Freddie?
Ganun pala, pwede pala.
Paul's got a little bit of a bad internet connection there.
Facebook,
Oh, I see.
actually,
Come here.
through mutual friends on Facebook.
Mutual friends, but I was thinking that maybe one of those mutual friends might have been Freddie Paquin. Did you know Freddie? Paul, well, we're having a tough morning there.
Yeah.
Ganun pala.
Okay, there you go.
There we go. That seems a little better.
I see.
Paul's going to reinvent his internet there.
Thank you. Yes. I gotta get my teenage nephews to consult with me on some IT issues, I think.
There we go. So this has been a crazy week, really monumental in a lot of ways. And so I'll just throw out two things, of course. First off, the Democrats picked Kamala Harris from California, senator from California, to be Joe Biden's running mate. And I very much said that specifically, didn't I? I said the Democrats have picked Kamala Harris to be Joe.
2:15. I will have 2:15.
Harris to be Joe Biden's running mate. And also, another major event here, that I don't think is getting anywhere near the publicity that it warrants, is that the Trump administration brokered a peace agreement between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. And that's really significant for a lot of different reasons. And we think that that's probably the first of many of those deals that are going to come together with the Gulf states in the Middle East. So Paul, why don't you introduce yourself now that your internet connection seems to be a little stable? Introduce yourself, please, and tell our fans about yourself.
Well, I'm a lawyer. I'm a retired lawyer now. Small town of Columbia Station. Lived in a lot of my life, except for some time in Florida.
Yeah, we're having a really tough connection.
And came back for various reasons, for family reasons, for some health reasons, and because my father at the time needed help.
Paano ba yan?
And
Andan
so
pa rin tong- I have the degree in political science and the degree in law. So I'm kind of I was told by a college advisor who knew me well, a political animal. So I've always kind of
Paul, we're really struggling on this connection. Is there any way, can you try and pop back out and reconnect again? Let's see if we can improve that, because you're breaking up pretty bad. Let's see if we can get Paul's connection cleaned up again.
Hey, Val, we did have another significant event here in Seattle, and that was the resignation of Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best. So that was kind of monumental interest. I don't hear the racism card being played because she's black, that, the city council want to cut her pay and all that. That I think actually there was a video, I didn't watch all, Al Sharpton had something to say about it, and actually maybe something somewhat halfway intelligent on that, but there doesn't seem to be backlash on the left for a black police chief getting a significant pay cut. I understood 40%, and nobody seems to be claiming discrimination on that I've heard.
Well, I think that this is probably going to be one of the more political Saturday morning shows. Let's see if we can get Paul added back in. Are you there again?
Yeah,
Paul?
I'm here.
Welcome back.
That seems to be a little bit better. We were just talking about the fact that the police chief in Seattle resigned this week, Chief Best, and she was really good, I think. And that actually, go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was surprised it took her this long, actually, to resign.
Yeah, she battled with the city council and the regional political structures all summer. So Paul, tell us, see if we can keep an internet connection here long enough that we can pick your brain. How do you feel about the situation? how do you feel this situation in the Middle East with between Israel and the UAE? That's a real powerful agreement there.
So it is, and I noticed the Biden campaign immediately tried to give Biden a little credit for it. But
I saw that too. It's hilarious.
But I agree with the person who observed that if Biden worked on it, he didn't complete the deal. So,
maganda mag-selfie dito.
And Mr. Trump and his son-in-law did. So, you know, I don't see actually between Israel and the states if the Trump administration continues. But if the Democrats get in and start to move toward peace or appeasement with Iran, I think those bills are going to get squashed.
Yeah, and of course, this, you know, the situation between the UAE being probably the most progressive of the Gulf states there. They are an economic powerhouse, obviously. They are a tourist attraction, but they are a global tourist attraction. And also the technology sector there is very, very strong, as is the technology sector in Israel is very strong. So this creates an alliance between two very separate cultures based on their ability to conduct commerce now, because they've got full recognition of each other. And this is the first time, I think, that we've had one of those Gulf states have full recognition of Israel. And that's really significant, because these are two economic powerhouses in the region that, now that they're combined, have the ability to do business back and forth, and that's going to pull in. In fact, I even heard a discussion that maybe the the Saudi Arabian government might enter into a similar deal with that. How do you feel about that, Paul?
Well, I think the Trump administration and the Trump family background, being in commerce, in business, in the international economics, does help that here. I think I think this is an economic deal that, you know, they figure that the UAE and maybe even Saudi Arabia might figure that they're
we're really having connection problems here. So, Paul, let's work on this. And the only thing I can think of is let's work on this and try and get you back again if we can get a little bit of a stronger connection. Because I'd love to hear what you say. I'm going to go ahead and pop him out so that we can continue. Paul is really strong in Facebook, and he leads some of the best discussions that I've seen out there. And unfortunately, his internet connection today is just not helping us. Just let me send him a message. Anyway, thanks everybody for bearing with us. You know, I love bringing in people who, you know, have some of that perspective and expertise. And unfortunately, in this situation, technology is not our friend today. So we know that moving forward in the Middle East, that the world is growing less reliant on their petroleum. There's a lot of other
Nag-istorya si Val, no? Pag-play ko.
Okay.
Try this.
Laong
Try this one
ako,
more time and see if we can connect.
Okay.
may tagbaba diha na link.
Yes.
So I was just talking
Tusulo
about the
ka.
fact that moving
Tapos,
forward, that we know that in the Middle East that
Isab
the
siya
world is growing less
Sasabot na
reliant
kaw
on their
para
petroleum.
balikan
So
kaw ni
they
Zell.
still have a valuable resource there, but they're using those income streams to develop other industry. And one of those obvious industries that they can benefit from is technology. They've got the money to be able to buy technology. And to buy the kinds of employees and brain power to do that. And Israel is kind of known as the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, and the UAE is really developing a lot of that same kind of technology possibility. So maybe we can expect to see some of these other nations join in there. But as Paul said, it was very funny, I thought, because almost instantly the Biden campaign jumped in and tried to make it sound like it was his idea, that he and Barack Obama made this happen.
Yeah. It's, well, it's political season, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So everything that happens, they have to try and, you know, paint it to benefit them. And I sort of understand that, but this is a big reach. This is a big reach because Barack Obama is the guy that sent a pallet load of cash to Iran. You know, and that's obviously not conducive to this kind of a deal. So anyway, this, you know, for people that are watching and maybe not so really tuned into all of this, because God knows the media didn't really, you know, help everybody, did they? This deal was largely brokered and coordinated through the Trump administration, and Jared Kushner, being Jewish, played a big role in this, right, Paul? We're still struggling with Paul's streaming here. I really wanted to get his feedback on this stuff, and it's just not happening today. So we're gonna have to see if we can work on Paul's IT situation and see if we can get him back sometime. So anyway, Brad, were you able to pick up and follow on any of these developments in the last couple of days? I know it's been pretty fast moving.
Well, I'm getting a little more attuned. I am not all into the Middle East stuff like you, so I really don't have an informed opinion. But some of the things I have found interesting were that in Biden introducing Harris, he seemed to be trying to blame, he was blaming Trump for the economy via the coronavirus, like somehow Trump brought on this economic malaise, to use Jimmy Carter's term, when it's all about the shutdown. A lot of these are Democratic states. Nothing was mentioned about that. And all the stuff I've seen from him, there's some question about his mental acuity. You know, where's he? Is he dementia or Alzheimer? He came across really good. I was shocked. I was expecting him to just kind of lose his thought train. He didn't. You know, maybe and I hate to say this, but it's political season, like Paul said. Maybe they got him on the right meds or something. He was lucid for the amount of time he needed to do the speech. But I understand Harris to be very left-wing, almost anti-constitutional, which I find. I'm not a big fan of politicians because they lie, and this was a showcase, Biden and Harris, of lying through their teeth to try to prop them. So it wasn't as much about themselves and their campaign as it was to slam Trump and throw him under the bus on every occasion. I actually watched it. Joni and I watched it. I don't usually watch that stuff because I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut. When
Yung
I
link
see, as
mo.
I tell my wife, seeing so much stupidity
Baba
uttered, I
mo.
have a hard time not saying, hey, wait a minute, no, that. So that's my 5 cents worth on that for the time being.
Yeah, last couple of weeks, we really talked a little bit about this selection process. Who did we think was likely to be the nominee? And, we talked about Kamala Harris. We talked about Susan Rice as another possibility. And neither one of those candidates really concerned me from an election standpoint. And I will go out there and I'm just going to publicly say that I do think that a change in administration would be a mistake for many, many different reasons. But just one of those examples is this situation that we see right now, that we now have recognition and an agreement, an economic agreement between two of the most powerful nations in the Middle East, and that would not have happened. It didn't happen under 8 years of that administration before. And Joe Biden has made it clear that he looks at this as the
Nag-message na ako pa lang.
Biden-Obama administration, as he called it,
Nag-message ako.
right? That he's trying to continue the restructuring of the United States and the restructuring of the vision of this country that Barack Obama started, and the change, and he wants to continue that. So what this means is a slide to the right or the left even more and more.
Maana
Right?
drakaw.
I think that's what you're
Well,
alluding to.
we've seen it more than ever. I'm usually more of an independent. I will just say I'm probably I didn't vote for Trump last time for a variety of reasons, but given the current field and the current state of things, I would probably say, and I haven't made a 100% decision on this, that I probably will vote for Trump. But yeah, with the rise again or surge of Bernieism, Bernie socialism, which is not
Butang na
really a
mo
true
bahay.
socialist either, and all these really
Bahay mo ba?
left-wing candidates, I think we saw a field that was further left
Maana maghanap.
than we've ever seen. I think it makes Hillary Clinton look a bit like a moderate. But now with Kamala Harris, and I've heard people, I've been listening to your guy, Ben Shapiro. Okay, and I think he's right. And other pundits I've heard say that Harris was only selected because she's black and she's a woman.
I think that there's an interesting.
We could talk about that. People don't like that, but I'm hearing a lot of people say those are the main reasons, and that's a poor reason to select a political candidate. I don't care what side you're on, is because of their sex and their race.
Well, I think that there's a couple of factors there. That's true, because he painted himself into a corner, didn't he? But the interesting part about this is, the racial card that was played. I mean, her father's Jamaican, her mother's Indian, East Indian. So,
Okay, may explain muna ako. Yung jacket, para makapagbaba ka ng bahay mo. Yung bahay mo, yung whitey mo. Whitey, YouTube. Para ma-highlight ba, pag na-click nila yung binaba mong bahay, diretso agad sa bahay mo. Tapos mabilis ka lang nila subscribe. Bawal isulat. Magalit si Whitey. Tapos, basahin mo yung Facebook mo, nag-message ako. Ouch. Huwag ka maglagay ng madaming sticker. Di ko alam kung pwede ba yun marami. Kaliki. Ilagay mo yung bahay mo para balikan ka nila. Hi, Gabs, 26. Hi po, host. Hello sa'yo, Gab. Bisaya, day. Yes, I'm Bisaya. Bisaya ka rin ba? Binigyan na po kita ng jacket para makapagbaba na kayo ng bahay nyo. Baba nyo na po yung bahay nyo. Andyan si Marilyn Satorinas, oh. Si Zel. Ibang ko, andyan pa ba si Zel? Pero baba mo lang, malay mo may pumunta, di ba? Okay. Taga saan ka po? Ayan na, Marilyn. I-click mo na yung bahay niya. Tapos magbakas ka, bakas comment, ganun. Para mabalikan ka niya. Dapat nagbakas ka din doon kay Zel. Para balikan ka niya. Masanay ka na, magaganito tayo pag nandiyan ako sa Surigao.
So then everybody stepped out here, and even people in the Black community now are stepping out saying, wait a minute, you know, this is not, she might be a person of color, whatever exactly that means.
Yeah.
But you know, she's not African American.
No, that's why when they were calling her black, I kept going, hey, hold on, wait a minute. Where's this connection? Why is she black? Why is she not a person of color? I'm not. And a lot of other people start bringing up that too. I said, I'm just the kind of person, I see this and go, wait a minute, your dad's Jamaican, your mom's Indian. How are you black?
Well, and maybe this is a slide towards person of color, because when she was elected to the Senate, she was promoted as the first Indian American. So regardless of that, though, we see someone who's very willing to shift her policies and procedures, and like I said, setting aside that racial component or even the gender component and looking at this from an election standpoint, I felt that the opposition people on the Trump campaign, you know, the people that are tasked with the issue of, okay, now what are we going to present to the public? What do we need to dig up on this person, right? I mean, that's kind of what the opposition people do. They get in and they look and they say, okay, how are we going to exploit? Where's the weaknesses? How are we going to exploit that? They didn't even have to look for this gal. She's got a half a dozen things there that, in 20 years ago would have been disqualification. We know we lived in a time when there were people running for political parties that.
Hello, Mind TV. Baba nyo lang po yung mga bahay nyo dyan, tapos magdikitan po kayo. Pag di nyo pa po ako nadikitan, padikit na lang po. Tapos, pabakas po and patamsak sa video ko. Thank you so much.
Were hugely popular, and then all of a sudden one of these things would come out and boom, they'd be gone in a week.
Yeah, the reporting of this stuff has really changed. Interesting. I was just watching a historical segment. It wasn't so much an expose on John F. Kennedy and his many affairs, and even then, he was pushing the envelope, but the media pretty much kept a lot of things that he did under wraps. And J. Edgar Hoover too. J. Edgar Hoover had he had dirt on everybody in Washington, D.C. I've read a biography on him. He was a guy that was extremely powerful because he had dirt on everybody, but basically they didn't allow certain stuff to come out that today all the tabloids were writing about it. The stories were quashed back then by Attorney General Robert Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and they have that power. Today you can't do that. You got too many media outlets, you got social media, you can't keep this stuff under wraps. But I heard somebody say, it's probably Ben Shapiro, that this.
Hello po, Batang Bisakol. Pwede po kayong sumali. Lagay nyo lang po yung bahay nyo dito para balikan kayo ng mga tao.
It's going to be a campaign against Trump, against Harris. So, and again, I'm not a big political guy, really not. I'm kind of jumping into some of this now just to see what's going on. It's coming up, but I see a country that's at least never more divided than I've seen in my 60 years, even going back to the Vietnam War days. But this is really the ideology. I used to say the Democrat and Republican Party were, you know, George Wallace said there's not a dime's worth of difference between them, and I think he was probably right. But now the Democratic Party shifted so far left. I can't support, even if I detested Trump. I will say, I'm not saying I do, but I couldn't vote for Biden and Harris. And just your ideology is too far left. Even Marxist, to the tinges of Marxism, which again doesn't work, and a lot of people don't understand the grounding of Marxism, and we could get into a whole discussion on that. But it's scary. It frankly scares me. Biden's mental capacity or incapacity, but Harris's really left-wing leaning ideologies. Is she really a person that should be the vice president and the president in waiting?
You know, one of the interesting aspects of this, and I think nobody's going to come here and present that either party, if they're politicians, there's I don't want to say this. They aren't known for being consistent all the time. They shift with wherever the wind blows, and that mostly they're willing to do just about anything to stay in power.
Yeah,
okay.
Or to get elected,
to get an election, to get funding, to sell their influence. That is the nature of politics. It's a very dirty business.
Yeah.
But among that, Kamala Harris has been particularly dirty. And there's data on this. There's evidence on this. And it's one of the reasons that I think it's so interesting. Both her and Susan Rice have that in common, is that there's specific stuff out there. There's video footage. There's anecdotal, commonly accepted anecdotal stuff that is going to be brought out now in this election. And we saw it within hours. Obviously, they've been preparing for weeks, right? What if she's chosen? What if Susan Rice is chosen? What if Michelle Obama stepped into the thing in some way? I'm still not completely convinced that Biden is going to come out of the convention as the candidate. I think it's maybe that's a 20%.
He's got the name recognition, if nothing else. He was VP for 8 years, but he's got the name recognition. Harris is really, I knew very little about her. I didn't watch really any of the debates last year. Again, I'm not ignorant, but I'm just not. If I can use this term, I hate that politics has devolved into a pissing contest. There's very little valuable dialogue, discussion. We go back to the Lincoln Douglas debates. I mean, most of it's just tit for tat, and I find that just moronic in trying to make an informed political decision. You're just throwing dirt at each other, and you expect us to sit there and go, well, who got the most dirt on him? Okay, then I'm voting for the other guy. And I go, where's the substance? We've moved beyond talking about their actual policies to where this is just an ad hominem attacks. Really, it's just let's attack the character of the other person. Let's not get into what they really believe. And I'm the kind of guy, I don't like that. That you're offending my intelligence when you do that.
You would hope philosophically that the rise of media would encourage debate, would encourage information and accuracy. Instead, what we've seen, and let's go back in contrast to 150 years ago, when you saw two candidates on a train coming through town, and they would get out and debate and speak to the issues. And these were educated people who were great communicators, more often than not. And these speeches, these debates, have become part of our history, where you read these and you go, where are the people today who speak like this? We don't develop our thoughts in verbal communication very much. Now we're involved in imagery. The media has become a theater.
Go back and read Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media. His famous phrase, the medium is the message. We've, I'll say, devolved there, at least over the last dozen to maybe 20 years, maybe more, where, yeah, there's very little substance, but everything's about the video. And can you catch this person in some gaffe or some contradiction? But I think we've lost the ability, and I'm going to say it, to think critically about these messages. I am a critical thinker. I am immensely annoyed at people that are just in pandering stupidity, nonsense. We devolved to the 30-second soundbite, and that's considered substantive. And I go, no, stop. What do they really believe? And I don't say what do they, to what they're telling me, but what are they really going to do? I want to hear. We could get in a whole discussion on this. I mean, go back and read Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media. I did 30 plus years ago, very helpful resource. But our technology has evolved at such a fast pace now. I think it's become the message, and we don't even know what the real message is anymore. We're tied up into the media, the social media clips, the sound bites, the gaffes, and here we are.
Well, and you hit the two sides of this. First off, the substance isn't being delivered. The other side of the equation is, if it was, people don't appreciate it or even have the ability, the intellectual ability to really drill down and understand it.
Baba niyo lang po yung mga bahay niyo po.
And I'm not saying that there's nobody out there that does, and I just made a lot of people angry, but I'm just going to give you an example that the debates today actually are moderated by people who are more interested in sensationalizing and perhaps protecting certain of the candidates involved. Look at how controversial this moderation piece is, where people come and they ask fluff questions. They're limiting, you've got 60 seconds to respond to this or something like that. I mean, how do you develop a complex thought in 60 seconds? So now you've got a situation, and this was true in the last presidential election on both sides, where you actually had people there who were capable and experienced and able to discuss complex subjects. And I've got two of them that pop into my mind, just on both, one on each side, and yet they were instantly reduced to, you're ugly, and everybody goes, hey, something about, some, as you said, almost an ad hominem or some kind of a sensational personal attack or something like that. And this became the nature, entertainment, elections as entertainment, theater, image. And so for the last 20 years at least, maybe before that, we have, what was that?
I'm going to look for a book. Here we go.
We have been electing presidents based on the image that they represent.
I want to recommend Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, written in 1986. It's a little bit dated because you didn't have the internet, but Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business, it's still, in my mind, spot on, Val. I mean, his critique of public discourse, and that's why I can't watch debates. There's nothing substantive in there for me to listen to. I hate to be crude, but it's a pissing contest. You've got biased, quote, moderators that want to diss on the other candidate and vice versa. There's nothing substantive, and you can throw tomatoes at me. There is nothing substantive in our current political debates that is worthwhile for me to spend my time watching. Sorry, not sorry.
So this brings up a question. Are we going to have presidential debates? We're all revved up for a Pence, Harris debate, right? And they're saying, oh, they can't wait to get at each other. And I think that that's actually going to be somewhat of an interesting debate because you have two dramatically different personalities here, don't you?
You do. Pence is very, conservative, Christian, very mild. I mean, he was probably the best pick for Trump. He's a guy, you can't really find anything wrong with him. Him and Harris are going to be like night and day. But yeah, I think what I'm understanding with Trump and Biden is Biden's team, I think they're scared. I've seen enough gaffes of Biden that it really leads me to question where he's at mentally. And I don't think you can just sweep that under a rug and say, no, I've seen too many of them. That's why I was very surprised in his speech introducing Harris. But him and Trump debating could be, he could.
Well, obviously, you're in that situation. You're obviously in a position where he'd been preparing for weeks for that. It was very carefully scripted. And
Trumpers on both sides.
And and obviously he was grilled and grilled and grilled. Do not leave the script. Don't go do this. Because again, ad-libbing is not his friend. And here we have an interesting dichotomy. I was so frustrated yesterday. Ems and I were going out to do some grocery shopping, going out to dinner, and there was something that came on the news that Trump did, and I was like, so mad. It's like, if anybody thinks that I'm a Trump apologist, you ought to know me better than that by now, because I've got this love-hate relationship with the guy. He does something brilliant, and then he immediately follows up with saying something idiotic. I'm sorry. It's just,
that's his biggest downfall. There's a lot of stuff. If he just would quit talking or quit tweeting, I think he'd do a lot better.
Yeah, I don't know how you could erase that, because on one hand, he brokers something that's truly historic in the history of the world. He brokered this. This is potentially on the order of brokering that initial peace deal in the Middle East, or this is potentially on the nature of Reagan collapsing the Iron Curtain. And this is that kind of monumental achievement. And then he follows it up by saying something silly about Kamala Harris. And I just felt like you just took your asset and you threw it away. You didn't focus on this great thing. You went and chased down a rabbit hole on something that absolutely gave her power. You gave her power. So I've got that frustration because I am not a Biden fan. Never have been. Before he ever ran for VP, I thought the guy was a stooge. Okay, and he is a stooge.
Well, you've been in politics for 40 years, and just my viewpoint, you've done enough damage. It's time to stop. You are not part of any solution. You're part of the problem. Please step aside. And they keep recycling the same people over and over for decades, and we get the same old, which Trump wasn't, and I still think is a bit of an outsider. But I'm more concerned now, I will say, in my 60 years of this upcoming election than I ever have been, just because all the things going on from COVID, the shutdown, which we could spend a whole episode talking about that, what's happening here in our own city of Seattle with the extreme leftist move, and I'll say the dereliction of duty by the mayor and the city council. And then now we've got the leftist politics of the Democrat Party being shoved at us. I don't know how many Democrat supporters are actually seeing through some of this and going, these people shouldn't be elected to office.
I do believe that you've got a portion, I don't know if that's 40% or what, but it's sizable, I believe, that are not hardcore leftists. They're liberal. But now they're looking at this and they're saying, wait a minute, I didn't really buy into burning down the city. I didn't buy into a permanent closure of the downtown business section. Because they did have a demonstration here in the last week, and I think it was fairly sizable. I can't remember the numbers. I don't know if I heard the numbers, but it was a lot of people, tens of thousands, I believe, that were support the blue don't reduce the numbers.
I know people that went to that. It was peaceful. There was no property damage and nobody was arrested. The media didn't really report on that.
And this is not, these weren't, as I understand it, these were not necessarily a Republican group or whatever. These were just citizens that were frustrated, maybe representing some degree of both sides of the political spectrum, frustrated at what they see going on in Seattle. So, one of the things that really intrigues me about this coming up, though, is this idea of presidential elections. How do you have a presidential election? I'm sorry, debate. How do you have a presidential election without actually having the two people debate? And I think, is it not pretty much figured out now that they got to have one? They're going to have one debate, one presidential debate. And I think that there's a lot riding on that. And I think both campaigns know that. The Trump campaign cannot wait to get Biden on the stage. You know that. But I think that's a big deal. Somebody asked me the other day, well, how's it going to go, or what's going to go on? I told him, I said, I have no idea. I have this feeling that Trump's going to win in a landslide because there's so much dirt on the other side. See, everything is out there about Trump. You know his strengths. You hate him or you don't hate him.
Mm-hmm.
But after what the Democrats have done going after the guy for the last 3 years, I don't think there's any October surprise.
No, I've never seen the networks. And again, I'm not a big network. I don't spend my days watching Fox News, but CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, I've heard and I've seen this. CNN could basically be called the anti-Trump network. That's all they do. They hammer against him. It's gone from being just reporting the news to being biased in what you're trying to do. And it just becomes a pissing contest. And as an American, I'm sick and tired of that. I don't tune into that. You lose me when you start doing that, because there's zero substance in that. It's all ad hominem attack. How bad can we smear the other person, the other party? And let's not really talk about issues that matter to you and me as Americans. Let's just see who has the least amount of dirt, or who isn't as big of a scumbag as the other. And that's how we elect people to office. That's sad. That's really sad.
I think we got this interesting situation in the United States right now. And I'm going to just touch on a little bit of this subject that's been talked about and shared around in different places. If people want to go out and do some research, they're going to be able to find information. But for decades, at the minimum, decades, the United States government has been operating a criminal organization. And every once in a while, people get glimpses into this. The Fast and Furious debacle under the Obama administration illustrated how the CIA and the Department of Justice were actually running guns, international gun running operation out of our government. And you all of a sudden people caught a glimpse of this. And I don't know, by the way, I don't know how many people are aware, but the Mexican government is actually right now trying to pursue a lawsuit against the United States for running guns in, the United States government running guns in and providing weapons to the drug cartels. Now, I want everybody just to think about that the Mexican government actually has evidence, and there's nobody here that can doubt this, actually have evidence that the federal government of the United States was providing guns and ammunition to the drug cartels that in turn were used to come back and kill American law enforcement people. And this is just the start of it, this whole pedophile ring that literally the CIA and Department of Justice are operating sex trafficking rings and drug rings in order to create money. but more to create influence, to entrap and get these politicians, whatever their vice is, whatever their situation is, to get dirt on them, to set them up and get them in compromising positions so that they can influence them. And this is the deep state. This is the shadow government that we're complaining about. Why do I bring this up? I think it's clear that Trump was elected not because of his great political acumen, because he's had struggles politically. Probably not because he's the guy that you most want to invite to your barbecue dinner, but because he's not part of that deep state. And it's obvious the way that he speaks about all of them and the way that he goes after them personally, that people instinctively and sometimes evidentially know that this guy's not one of those deep state criminals. And it's the hope that he will persevere and break that up. Because I think most people understand that we have several existential threats in this country. We might not make it the next 30 years. This country very well might not exist in 30 years. But if it has any hope, the hope has to be by breaking up these criminal organizations and by getting some kind of term limitations in place, by getting some campaign reform in place. And Trump represents that group of people, that large group of people in the United States that hate what the government has become.
Well, and I think, Val, just from my standpoint, I don't consider this ultra like far right wing conspiracy theory or stuff, but I think we have to realize that there's a lot of stuff our government has done for years that we know very little about. So our government's not this altruistic, great, everything they do is wonderful and they always have people's, best interests are. No, they don't. There's a lot of stuff our government does that is shameful. And this is part of what causes this is because our government has become so powerful that they are basically not accountable to us as the people anymore. They can do what and I'll just say this, they can do what they damn well please, and they do. And they're getting away with it. And that's what's bothered me for years is we have a stranglehold of two parties that basically we do little to move us forward, but we have a government that's so deeply entrenched. Look at how the NSA can listen in on to any and every conversation. So don't mention anything, words like terrorist bombing or something like that, because they'll pick us up. But guys, the threat of an all-powerful government was what our founding fathers were trying to protect us from. And despite the three branches of government, the judicial, legislative, and losing Joe Biden moment here. The government still they are all powerful. Look at how they control everything. We can get into the discussion of the Fed, an organization that has no political accountability, that's not part of our Constitution. They have absolute control over what happens in our economy. And most people know nothing about it because they don't know, they haven't read anything about it. And to think that it's naive to think that our government can't do this stuff and that it isn't, we got to wake up as Americans. That's why I said, stop watching insubstantive debates, start doing your research, start reading, start looking and finding out what's really going on. Educate yourselves before it's too late.
I'll throw out there, you mentioned the Fed. I'm going to throw out three more government agencies that tremendously need to be reformed or eliminated. The first off right now is the Food and Drug Administration. What a bureaucratic mess this is. What a controlled, contrived organization it is. This is set up and it's presented as, well, we're going to protect the American people against bad drugs and things like that. What it's actually become is a mechanism to control us for the purpose of promoting what the drug companies want us to do.
Big pharma.
To be able for them to make money.
Look at all the plethora of ads on TV. They're all about drugs. I mean, I can look at, gosh, maybe I should take all these drugs. There's a new one every week coming out that's being promoted. They're getting our whole society on drugs from A to Z.
Well,
Your whole life is.
I'm going to share one headline right now coming out of Western Journal, and I looked over here to pull this up. So it says, Michigan hospital tries to treat patients with hydroxychloroquine, but the FDA says no. So here you've got hospitals, you've got doctors all over the world. I just read a study, and there were more than 2,000 doctors around the world that listed this as their #1 course of treatment that they were using successfully against COVID-19. And you've got study after study that's being promoted out there now that says that this hydroxychloroquine is not effective. And I will tell you, I've pulled up some of these major studies and read them, the one out of France, the one out of Minnesota, and those studies, they didn't even use the drug as recommended. They might as well have dissolved it into a liquid and painted it on the bottoms of people's feet. They didn't use it as recommended. Then they come out and say, well, it wasn't effective. It's ridiculous. And the headlines get taken and run with, okay? So that's a major passion of mine, that doctors and patients should be making these decisions, not the Food and Drug Administration. You've got a 65-year-old drug with more than 1 billion prescriptions written globally. It's been on safe lists. It's sold over the counter in countries. But the Food and Drug Administration is preventing your doctor from prescribing that to you because they want to steer you in another direction. That's criminal. And that organization needs to be remarkably changed. But it won't be changed unless you maintain this course of disrupting that state. Here's another one. Department of Education. We have a federal Department of Education. Why do we need a federal Department of Education? Isn't your local school board totally responsive to the population there, that they can decide what textbooks and things and the courses of study for your children? So there's one. We could talk about the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and some of the horrible things we've seen with them. Right? Go ahead.
Department of Homeland Security. I had a gentleman I knew that was an ex-FBI agent, and I had a conversation with him. I said, Eric, don't we already have all the existing law enforcement in place? Why on earth? And this was started with the Bush administration. Last time I checked, they were running about a $70 billion a year budget, growing. I worked for Walgreens Drugs, who was a 105, 110-year-old company. It took them that long to get to 70 billion. In less than like a decade, you had a new created organization, government agency that was taking in, sucking in, eating $70 billion a year of resources. Why? And they haven't found one terrorist yet either, by the way. Not one.
No, a lot of these agencies become bureaucracies for the sake of promoting their bureaucracy.
Yeah, they do nothing, absolutely nothing, but they're consuming 70+ billion and growing of our tax dollars every year.
Well, and Ems and I, many people know, my wife is from the Philippines, and we are still and probably will be forever trying to process her paperwork. She's here in the United States. We're married. She came here on a fiance visa, and yet we're still trying to negotiate these problems. And our immigration system is so horrible, and there literally are regulations that you can't do A until you do B, but you can't do B until you do A. They're circular, and you're immobilized. It's like, well, wait a minute. Department A tells me I have to have Department B. Department B tells me I can't do B until I get A, and you run around and wasting all of this time and energy and money, countless money. Somebody said to me, well, you need to go back to them and ask, what do they want? And I said, no, they don't work like that. You pay your fee, you submit your paperwork. If it's rejected, you get to pay another fee and submit more paperwork. They don't respond to you. It's just a put and take deal. So, Brad, let's turn here. We've got a few minutes left, and I would like to turn the conversation, as we always do, to what are people what are people going to be looking at? I was talking to my dear friend Hong Lee this morning as we were talking about, because of course jewelbook.com, and this is a platform that I've kind of become increasingly interested in because it helps people set up home-based businesses. But people are going to be under attack. I don't care who gets elected from that standpoint, right? The financial situation is going to get very uncomfortable for families, whether it's because of the employment situation or the fact that we are staring down the barrel right now of a $30 trillion federal debt. And the interest payment on that is staggering for the American family. In 2025, the interest payment on the federal debt, regardless of whatever, is the largest single item, larger than the defense budget, largest single item on the federal budget. And we've grown since 2009, we've grown 300%, right? We go from about 9 trillion to 30 trillion in what?
It's unsustainable, and it has been for years, but very few people are, one, really aware of it, or two, even think it matters. And our public officials there's zero meaningful discussion about this at any level, Val. Zero meaningful discussion. Why? Why not?
Because everybody's running around competing for headlines and competing for ratings. And telling people that they need to get really, really, really serious about setting alternative income streams, about really, really serious about how are they going to feed their family in this country. That is not sexy. People don't.
No.
And you know, obviously we don't have 100,000 people watching this because we tend to not deal with the sexy stuff. You know what, if we put pictures of bikini girls up here and things like that, we'd probably get a lot more
If
hits.
we sat in our underwear, we might really get, I don't know. That'd be a scary thought.
Probably get arrested is what we probably do.
But yeah, Val, I think people need to really need to dig deep and take responsibility. Really, the government's not going to take care of you guys. Okay, they're just not. We're in a mess. Our city, even at the state level, it's confirmed to me that government is not our savior. They're not our benefactor. They're not there to really help us out, but they can sure screw us. They can sure put the screws on us. We need to take charge, and that's what our plea, at least for me, is, guys, be open to looking at alternative sources. We got home-based business opportunity. Val, I think Jewel Book, I'm hoping maybe they'll go public and I'll invest some money and I'll do really well off an IPO. But I think they're taking advantage of a trend that's needed. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. The paradigm shifting, guys. How we used to live life and do business is changed. How are you going to take advantage of it?
It's huge. And I was just looking for a graphic here that I think I had the other day, and I don't seem to have it here right at my disposal. But yes, the federal debt, I want to say since 2009 has grown from 9 trillion to, we're about 27 trillion, 28 trillion right now, and looking at 30 trillion very soon.
That's insane. I mean, that number is it's.
Well, I thought it was going to take 10 more years to get there. We made that leap in 1 year from 20 trillion to 30 trillion. 1 year. I mean, it's shocking. And people need to get really serious about how are they going to create second income streams? How are they going to work together as a family? You know what? This is something we don't do in this country, and we're starting to go over time here, but I'm telling you, this subject to me is riveting. And I compare our culture to the Philippines. The Philippines, families pretty much all live together, or they live really close to each other. Sometimes in a village, and they work together to because they have to put food on the table. It's not a rich country. And yet here in the United States, because of our wealth, we've lost this culture of working together as families. We've lost the culture of being community driven. And I think I think that's one of the messages. I think people need to get back to that. People need to sit down with their family and think about this and say, okay, how are we as a family going to develop more income streams? Who has what skills? How can we use the internet to build income? This is something you and I have been talking about for 2 years.
Never been better. Gary Vaynerchuk, I listen to him a lot. He's saying we've never been in a better situation despite everything going on, but you have to believe that, but you have to take action on, not there, instead of sitting there going, yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, that's great. What are you doing about it? You've got to take action, and you're going to have to go against the grain. It's not there in jobs, guys. It's just not. It's not there in the corporate world. It's just not.
And to what, the right or wrong or whatever, the truth of the matter is, this is not going to be an academic discussion any longer. This is going to be forced.
Yes.
Families are going to be looking at them. They're going to be saying, wait a minute, the unemployment benefits are running out here pretty soon. They're not going to continue those forever. They diminish. You can't have increasing numbers of people just on unemployment more and more all the time forever. So there comes a point in time where you got to figure out some way to fix your issue, and it's got to happen in your home. And you know, I'm just letting everybody know. State of Washington is an example. I read the other day. State of Washington, actually, the unemployment fund was empty in May. Now they're pulling it from other places. They're trying to beg the federal government. There comes a point in time where the states are going to go, you know, we've never seen it in this country. We've never seen a situation where you go to the water, you turn it up, and nothing comes out. And these are the things that we need to address. And it's not doom and gloom. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have the tools available. They're right there, easier than ever before.
Yeah. Where the challenges, there's equal opportunity, but we have to focus on the opportunity instead of letting the challenges beat us down and blind us to the opportunity. That's what we're saying, guys. Look at the opportunity that can come out of this for you and your family, and turn off the TV. Just quit playing games. Get serious about life. I'm going to post something Monday, and the question is, and I don't think people are going to like this, are you playing offense or defense in your life?
That's a good one. That's a good subject. All right, my friend, I guess we need to hang it up for another Saturday, and I love this conversation. I know that we are right on the edge of many, many great things. The question is, which direction is this country going to turn? Are we going to pull it back? Or are we going to keep going down that wrong road that has never succeeded? We've got to clean this country up. We have the ability to do that. And we sit there right now with this election. We sit there with this technology that we have, and we're encouraging people to step out there, take control of their life, get involved in the game, win.
And listen to people that know what's going on. Turn off people that don't have any solutions, and there's more of them than don't. And I tell people honestly, hey, if we seem to be the people, you decide, are we people that you want to partner with? Are we credible? Do we know what we're talking about? Do we have your interests in heart, or what? You got to decide that. I'm going to say, yes, we do. But you have to make that determination for yourself.
And with that closing thought, Brad, thank you so much. I'm sorry we couldn't connect with Paul. He's just, you know, I watch what he writes on social media, and he's so brilliant and so concise, and yet technology really down to the. All right, buddy. Love you guys. See you later. But it always seems to be going live before it actually goes live. Good morning, everybody. This is Val Campbell and Brad Kranz on the Saturday Morning Show. Brad, it's been a couple of weeks since we introduced ourselves. There might be some new people here. Tell us about you.
Well, I'm Brad. I live in the Seattle area, close to CHOP. For those of you that don't know, that's actually a sad part of it. Little political commentary there. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, guys. I'm a business owner, and I'm excited to see about where we're going. I think, and I'm just going to start out saying this, guys. I know what's happening in the economy. I think you need to prepare yourselves. We've talked about this. I've had some conversations this morning on all this. A lot of people get what's going on, but what I think a lot of people don't get is they don't have a plan. What are you going to do? We're going to talk about your cheese just got moved. What are you going to do? I think you need to be looking for opportunities to solidify and shore up whatever you're doing financially, because we are in a new economy, like it or not. And that's some advice, free, no charge. But I just think we got to pull our head out of the sand, and we need to be paying attention to what's going on. Got to be self-aware. I hope you've got some good mentors and people that understand what's going on. So if you don't, tune in, stick with us. Hopefully we can help you out a little bit.
Yeah, we get into a really broad range of subjects. My name is Val Campbell. I've spent my whole life in the business world. Sometimes I wish I'd really worked on my golf game or something like that, and made a bunch of money hitting little white balls or whatever. But no, I started out in the sciences. As a high school kid, I was working on advanced stream rehabilitations and a lot of scientific stuff. Went to school originally to be a zoologist, a herpetologist, actually, studying reptiles and amphibians. Spent a lot of time with those guys and gals down at the Woodland Park Zoo, which at the time was one of the foremost reptile collections in studied areas, and Frank Slavens and Ernie Wagner and some of those guys down there. And I noticed that the people in the sciences, and this included, we're in Seattle, so the fisheries industry and oceanography was really big here. But I noticed that all the science people that I knew, they were feeding their families weenie water soup and stuff like that. You couldn't make any money. You practically had to pay to work, to be at the zoo, right? To work there. They didn't pay you. So I thought, this is really bad. So I shifted over into business. So there's a lot behind that. But as we talk about some of these things, I guess I can say I've got enough of a sciences background to be able to understand some of this stuff. And we've been talking a lot about viruses and weird things recently. So I've actually enjoyed kind of diving back into that part of the world. I do have a technical background. I've been in the construction industry, done a lot of business consulting, and in the construction industry, oddly enough, one of my areas of expertise is managing teams using personal protective equipment in hazmat situations like asbestos and lead contaminated areas, and aerosols like paints and different types of things that are being applied. So anyway, I've got some background in that, and that's kind of fun. But Brad and I tend to talk mostly about business and success and how to take advantage of trends, right, Brad?
Yeah, I'm going to share this. This is on my heart this morning. I was watching Gary Vaynerchuk, and I love watching because it's what this guy's got. He understands what's going on. Aside from, he likes to use the F word a lot, but if you block that out, ignore it. The guy's got a lot of wisdom, a lot of compassion and empathy, but he knows what's going on in the digital media world. But he said something this morning that really struck me. He said he could have invested in Uber like twice. He could have made, $300 million on paper, and he didn't. But he said, he doesn't worry about his failures. I won't tell you exactly what he said, but he doesn't care about his failures. He goes, it's okay to fail as long as you're not so over leveraged that one of those failures puts you over the edge financially. And I said, wow, okay, that's good. So don't have all your money in one pot. If all your money's in one deal and you're wrong on it, you're going to be hurting, but it's okay to fail. And I think that message struck me, Val. It's okay to fail. I don't know about you, but I've failed more in my life than I've had successes. I think we're just getting to the precipice. I don't know, precipice isn't the word. We're getting to where we got everything together business-wise, and we're going to see some real success in our business here from September through the end of the year and ongoing. But it's taken a while to get there. And if you're just looking short-term, and I'll just be honest with this because I still laughed at this when I picked up my taxes for my CPA last month. One of the things he said, he kind of just goes, "You made $60 last year?" Yeah. I'm not going to make $60 this year. I'll make 61. But I was reminded and I know what he's doing. He said, "You're in this deal. You're only making," yeah. Last year was a learning curve for me, Val, and 6 months of this year. But if you think short term, yeah, $60, I should get out of this deal. If you're not looking long term, you're going to miss it. And I think, again, we are at the cusp of real success for what we're doing with some things going on. But if you quit before you get there, or you're thinking short term, you're going to miss out. I mean, what do you think? I mean, that is my message. I'm just kind of reminded, short term versus long term thinking. You got to be in this for the long haul, right? If you bogey on one hole in golf, you got 18 more, right?
Well, let me put a little perspective on that for you. American Airlines wishes they made $61 last year. This year, right? They wished they made $61. I'm actually kind of going through this discussion with the federal government right now because as a business person, I just let everybody know. I know it's a big shock. As a business person, you have absolutely no incentive to have a lot of taxable income. The objective is to use all of the legal and appropriate tax laws and regulations to reduce your taxable income, and thereby the tax structure is set up. Well, this is really off what we're going to really talk about today, but it's a good subject.
That's okay.
The tax laws are structured to encourage people to invest and grow businesses. The idea being is that that's going to stimulate the economy. You have more successful businesses. Eventually, the idea is if you do that, you're going to make money, but that might be a long ways down the road for a business. Amazon, I think it took them 14 years before they actually made money, but they were huge by that time. They kept reinvesting all of their money into growth and into infrastructure, into equipment and facilities.
Billions of dollars into capitalization that there was I remember discussion in the mid to late 90s, are they going to really make it? Because they had borrowed billions of dollars of capital to get going. And now you look at them, and the sad thing is too, now people are jealous and successful. Look at all these wealthy companies that are making it. And again, I'm just going to share my attitude and heart. You need to do something about it. Stop being a victim. Stop blaming Amazon. Stop blaming Apple. They just got a $2 trillion market valuation. We got to stop being victims, Val, in our economy, in our country, and start taking action, guys. I'm just going to say, I'm going to get on this. I hope I make you mad. Get off your butts and start focusing on taking action to do something. Stop being a victim. Okay?
And Brad, a part of that message, and I'm going to use another analogy. Part of that message is, don't get mad at the hurricane when it comes to town. You live in a place where your hurricanes happen. Don't get mad at the economy or the employer or the government or whatever when that shift comes and knocks you down. You know the shift is coming. It always comes. If anything, I fault a lot of our education system for not teaching people as they're growing up how the deal works and what the game is. They don't. So they're surprised. They get out there and they find out that the shift happens, and they're left standing there with nothing in their pockets. And I fault that.
Got moved. And Gary Vaynerchuk said this morning. He was talking to people. He said, you know, as an entrepreneur, I can't blame anybody else. You can't blame anybody else. But I think in the quote business, the work world, we've shifted our blame to the government, the economy, you know, my boss and this, and I got to say, stop it. You got to look in the mirror. What are you doing to change your situation? We have to start taking personal responsibility.
Well, and you know, and the other piece of that is people say, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I just have a job. I'm an employee. Now, there's a concept here. And again, I go back to the education system. I'm just going to be really blunt. I'm sorry if you're a teacher. That's an honorable profession, but they're teaching the wrong things. And that's not the fault of the teacher. That's the fault of the education system. Now, emphasis on the word system.
Yeah.
Because they're taught to go to school, get a good job. That's how you make it in America. And what they're not taught is the fact that is not how the economy works. That's not how finances work. If you are an employee, you are an entrepreneur. You just have one product that you're selling to one company. Every egg is in one basket. That's what an employee is. It doesn't mean that you're not in business. You are just in business serving one customer, and it's that one customer with your one product being your time. If something gets disrupted with that one customer, you can't blame the world. Maybe you can go back and say, gee, they didn't teach me that. But, you know, as an adult, we all need to step up and realize that government bailouts don't happen forever.
No, and I think some of them, and the big message I keep getting and that I'm understanding more and more is self-awareness. You got to know who you are. And I'll just say, Val, in all fairness, not everybody can be an entrepreneur. I get that. Okay, you can call entrepreneur employee. I would just say they're an employee, but self-aware. You've got to be aware of what's going on around you instead of thinking, hey, everything's supposed to work for me. This is supposed to be right. Hey, man, nothing in my life has gone right if I'm bluntly honest. Okay. That's how life rolls. That's how the ball rolls, and you can be mad about it, and you can say, woe is me, or you can say, okay, that is life. And I don't want to be just cut and dry hard, but that's kind of what you're saying, Val, is we got to realize the playing field isn't necessarily equal, but you got to make some shifts so you can take the most advantage of what is available. We still have the best economy in the world, and we are the land of opportunity, but I think people have forgotten that.
And even overseas, I mean, you know, we talk sometimes about the United States, and there are some advantages here. We have more options, really, than other countries, but those options come at a price also. And I fear that, you know, when people think, for instance, well, the government's going to, you know, do a stimulus, or the government's going to do something. The government can't give you anything they don't take from you first. And they can borrow from the future, but all they are doing is giving you the...
Hello po kay Madam Bebang. Tsaka kay Bambert TV. Kay Christina Igupin. Hello po. Salamat sa pag-view ng aking live. Testing pa lang po ito. First time kong STREAMYARD. Maraming salamat po sa pag-view. Patulong naman po sa pagdikit kay Marilyn sa Torinas tsaka kay Abby's Vlog. Meron pa dito, sorry Grace. Hindi ka ba makababa? Bakit hindi ka makababa? What happened? Hindi po kita hinayda. Wait lang. Bakit hindi ko makita tong iba? Dito lang sa kabila. Grace Orcolo. Nabigyan na po ata kita ng jacket eh. Paano ba yun? Gagamay, bottom sakol. Bakit ganun? Bakit hindi nakikita yung sa kanila? What happened? I don't know. Hindi naman kita hinide. Ito po si Grace Orsulo. Try nyo lang po ibaba. Pero bakit hindi kita nakikita? Anong problema? Salamat po, Madam Lalis, sa pagtamsak dyan. Ingat po sa pagpasok. Padikit naman po dun sa mga bagong bahay. Si Abby at saka si Marilyn. Maraming salamat po. Ano ba to? Hindi ko alam. Grace Orsulo. Hindi ka na makita. Anong problema? Tingnan ko nga muna dito. Kanina pa pala to si Grace Orsulo. I'm sorry, hindi po kita nakita. I have no idea. Ano ba to? Tingnan ko.
The ability to borrow money because the government can do that. The government's like a bank, right? They just say, hey, we're going to borrow a whole bunch of money from your future and give it to you now. You don't even get to vote on that.
No.
And they oblige you to be responsible for that interest. So that's a really deep subject, and we've been talking a lot about this because of the whole virus situation, right? I'm trying to make a little bit of a turn here because Brad and I talked about opening up the show for a couple of weeks and talking about an option, a fact of life on how to deal with the coronavirus, how to successfully deal with this in a way that the government and all the media and everybody's not talking about.
Nabigyan na po kita ng jacket, Grace Orsulo, kung andyan ka po. I'm sorry, it's late. Hindi ko po talaga nakita. Pasensya na po.
And it's really disgusting to me.
Sorry.
It's reprehensible.
I'm sorry.
That the only thing they're talking about is vaccines, masks, social.
Bamberg TV, na bihisa na po kita. Sorry for the late bihis.
Distancing and vaccines, none of which are really appropriate. They are not an appropriate application to this particular situation. None of them. And people think that I'm outrageous when they say that.
No.
But I just have shared a lot of stuff on social media, literally studies in hospitals that prove again and again and again. I think I posted an article with about 20 studies in it that prove that masks don't even work in surgery. They've done studies and found out that the infection rates in patients in surgery actually is the same or goes down if the doctors aren't wearing masks. Things like this. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but we'd like to talk about health because both Brad and I have a really intense personal experience. We're going to go ahead and open up and be candid with people. Intense personal experiences with our health, and we want to share the things we learned about being healthy. Right, Brad? Is that
okay?
Agreement? So, Brad, why don't you go ahead and kind of start with your story, if you will, and let people know what you've learned about being healthy, because being healthy is the best way to combat illness. I mean, doesn't that make sense?
Yes, and I'm going to get there, but from what you said, given this COVID situation that we're in, and I said, how long does this quote flu really go on? Unfortunately, probably till at least election here in the U.S.
It's going to be remarkable. It's going to be remarkable.
Yeah, but it's like I've never seen a flu season, and then we're going to be into the new flu season. So that brings up other questions, which we don't have time to get onto. But Val, part of my thought on this, because I have a chiropractor, I've worked with a clinical nutritionist, I've worked with a naturopath, etc. And my chiropractor keeps saying if your immune system is built up, you're okay. Your body can build. But guess what? And I'm just sidetracking a little bit. The government, everything coming from the government is about fear, and more fear. But I have heard not one suggestion from government or media on how to get your body healthy. We should be thinking about this. I mean, that's a question nobody's asked. It's like there's this proverbial elephant in the room. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Excuse me. Can I ask a question? How come we're not talking about how to get our body optimally healthy so I can deal with this quote pandemic that's a load? I'm just gonna say it's a load of crap, guys. It's not a pandemic. I'm gonna leave it there. How do we get our bodies healthy? Okay, so here's my short story on this. Again, if your immune system is built up, your body should be able to fend off and ward off illnesses, and that's what my chiropractor is indelibly or well trained in. Keep optimizing your body health, because he just laughs at this. But I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. It's actually stage 4 prostate cancer. Thank B, it's not spreading, thank goodness. But what I was forced to confront, and I did a lot of reading, I probably read 5 or 6 different books on them. I'm not going to pull them out. We're not going to go through those. You'd be here till at least noon. Is how important the right diet is. Number one, just to keep healthy as a normal American. But if you have cancer, there are certain things, and I found out that sugar feeds cancer, the cancer cell, just like you'd say heroin feeds a heroin addict. Well, if you want to get heroin addict off of heroin, you don't, sorry, Sally Bagshaw, you don't buy them heroin. It doesn't work. But if you have cancerous cells in your body, which I do, they're down the prostate and they're outside, they metastasize to some of the lymph nodes, you need to watch your sugar intake, number one. And that's a big deal, because so much of the foods we eat convert to sugar ultimately. If you're eating carbohydrates, potatoes, guess what? Yeah, it's carbohydrates, but those carbohydrates turn into glucose, which is a sugar. And again, sugar feeds cancer. So I really had to look at, and I started working with a naturopath, getting on a anti-inflammatory diet, so my cells weren't being inflamed. Again, a lot of the foods we eat, and I'll go over I'm going to probably share some stuff more, a whole food approach to it, because I think we're not here to dispense medical advice or necessarily diet recommendations, but I will say our American diet is terrible. How most people eat is terrible, and we wonder why we're sick. And when I started looking at and this is kind of funny now, at the changes I needed to make in my diet to minimize the effects of, and I wasn't eating a lot of processed foods, but primarily sugar, I thought, I'm not going to die of cancer, I'm going to die of starvation. Because it was like, whoa. And now you start reading labels, and almost everything has sugar in it. So it's like, okay, how much, the less is more. Our diet in America is overloaded with sugar. We're probably taking in, I don't recall the exact number, like 8 times the amount of sugar that we should be on a daily basis. And that sugar's doing something in your body. Okay. And that's not good. I'll just say that. So that's in short of it. I'll get into some specifics here, but I was forced to radically alter my diet to be more conscious of what I was eating, to start looking at labels, particularly for sugar. But as my clinical nutritionist, he's a board certified clinical nutritionist, he said, if your thumb can't, I'll just take this ball, if your thumb can't cover the ingredients on something, then it's probably not good. And you know what? he's for the most part right. If your thumb can't hide all the ingredients, there's probably a lot of stuff in there that you shouldn't be eating that's processed. And there's some decent sugars, but there's a lot of alcohol sugars. There's sugars in almost every food we eat. Even that's why I've never been a big milk fan. Sorry, I drank it as a kid, but I probably have drank milk for 35, 40 years, just not a big. But milk, lactose, a lot of people are probably 65% of Americans are lactose intolerant. Lactose converts to sugar in your body. Voila, probably didn't know that. But one of my daughters, and even I think my wife, Joni, has some issues with dairy, which most people don't. But guess what? We have a high dairy diet, you know, milk, cheese, all this stuff. And again, lactose, it turns into sugar. And it's your body is being fed that. So there's a lot of foods that aren't doing our bodies any good. So my message, and I'll turn it over to you for a minute, Val, is just we need to be aware of what we're eating. I thought I was doing a pretty good job, and I was, but in retrospect, I really wasn't. Specifically for a condition like cancer, it's all, and I'm just going to say this, it's almost shameful because my oncologist did not understand, and I'm glad to have an oncologist. Medical doctors are wonderful, but I really think you need to work with a naturopath or somebody that understands the interaction, whole body health. Because my oncologist did not understand half the supplements I was taking. He was wondering why I was thinking I'm spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on this. And he asked me, why are you taking all this? I said, to keep my body healthy. And what I didn't say, because I didn't want to sound like a jerk, was because you're going to be trying to feed me some poison that's going to hurt my body. And I need to get my body in an optimal condition. That's what I was faced with is, do I go on chemo? I ended up doing radiation, not maybe as severe as chemo, but radiation, guess what, can cause cancer. The cure they're giving you can help cause cancer. So you really need to look at what you're being fed, but most oncologists for cancer, and they're not taught, Val, you're saying what we're taught in school. Well, medical school, they're not taught about nutrition or how to optimize your body. Most oncologists will tell their patients, you can eat whatever you want to gain weight. I'm just going to say personally, from what I've read, what I've studied, that is some of the worst, and I would say some of the most irresponsible advice you can give. A cancer patient sucking down Starbucks Frappuccinos, eating cookies, ice cream, and all that, you're not helping your body out. And this goes into is cancer genetically based, which I'm very skeptical of, or is it a metabolic? I've taken more. There's a great deal of evidence supporting a metabolic approach to cancer, that it's based on our diet, lack of or overstimulation by foods. And this whole process has been overlooked and supplanted over the last 100 years by, guess what? Big Pharma. Now, instead of eating right, which has been proven for well over 100 years to have positive effects, now you can take a pill. And guess what? From the medications I'm on for my cancer, that I'm glad I have them, but I have hypertension and I have depression issues because of the medications. And I have weight gain too, based on the medicines. Hopefully I'll be getting off of some here, but every medicine you take, which is a processed product, guys, it's not natural, will have side effects. And I'm having to counter the side effects of my medication to deal with the cancer. But that's where, again, I'm going to get back to it. Diet is so important. How do you optimize the health of your body? You do it by eating good food, real food, not fake, McDonald's Big Macs that are like 90% chemical or whatever it is. So that's kind of my quick story, guys. But I'd say don't wait till you get cancer to check your diet out. We can optimize our health. And again, we can go back to the COVID thing. Nobody's talking about how to optimize your health to deal with this, and that's shameful. The information is there, the resources are there, but we're not being told. We're not being informed. But again, it comes back to personal responsibility. You've got to take some responsibility to understand and know this stuff. So, Val, take it away.
Absolutely. So I've told my story before, somewhat similar to Brad's. My dad died when he was 54. He had some bad habits. He smoked, primarily. And he didn't really ever get any exercise. But still, at the age of 54, and I can remember being with my dad in a situation where he had a boat and we were on the boat and he was using a saw, a hacksaw, to cut a bolt. And this was a bolt the size of your finger. It just took minutes. And he was so winded and so exhausted by the time he cut that bolt. And I remember I was about, 16, 17 years old. And I remember looking and going, wow, that's pretty bad, And then at the age of 45, I started having some symptoms similar to that. So smoke had a much healthier lifestyle in many ways, but I was experiencing this exhaustion. It was just horrible. I couldn't even walk up and down the stairs without resting. It just got so bad. I remember I was at a job site one time. I was in the construction business. I walked down a driveway to a project down on the water that we were building, and I walked back up. I was exhausted. And so I started going to the doctors. I went to 3 medical, in the course of a couple of years, I kept shifting because the doctors didn't seem to have any solutions for me. You'd go in there, and what they do is they take your blood pressure, they'd weigh you, and then they'd go to a chart, they'd go like this, they go, oh, these are the drugs we're giving out this week. And the side effects from the drugs I hated worse than what I was experiencing from whatever was bothering me.
Yeah.
And so eventually, the third doctor clinic that I went to one in Bellevue, went to one in Redmond, then I went back to a different one in Bellevue. This guy was an internist. He really was quite brilliant. He was really great. And I was pouring through, I was getting international health and wellness magazines, the fitness industry. And I had these things sticky taped and underlined, and I was going through. I said, there's got to be an answer in this day and age for this. I'm 45, 46, 47 years old. By this time, there's got to be an answer. And I put these magazines, a big stack of them, probably about this thick, into this guy, and I'm asking him questions in this. And after a couple of minutes, he says, whoa, wait a minute. He says, I got to tell you a couple of things. The doctors don't know anything about that. This guy's an internist that lectures at a local university. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, doctors don't know anything really about that stuff you're talking about, health and wellness stuff. Doctors are really schooled and licensed by the government to diagnose illness and treat it with drugs and surgery. That's what doctors do. And he told me, he said, doctors are regulated by the insurance industry. We can only prescribe the treatments that are in the list and the drugs that are in the list given to us by the insurance industry. And he said, doctors don't really know a lot about nutrition and health and wellness. And further, he said, if they do, they're not, unless they're licensed in that area, they're not even licensed, and their insurance doesn't even cover them talking to you about that. So they don't want to get into health and wellness. They just want to, take your vital statistics and then look and see if you got sickness and how they can treat it. And they manage you to a standard. The standard is determined by the insurance industry to allow the insurance industry to make money. So the doctors are really patient managers for the insurance industry. And you can imagine my shock of I've never heard any of this in my life. I'm sitting in a doctor's office, and this board certified internist lectures at the medical school, local university, is telling me these things. He says, in fact, I've got a class action lawsuit going against the big insurance company right now because they fined me $5,000 because I prescribed a treatment for a patient that was the right thing for the patient, but it wasn't what they wanted me to prescribe. So they fined me $5,000. And I thought, how can this be? And coincidentally to that, at that same time, I was cleaning some things in my house one Saturday morning downstairs, and I had a radio on, and I heard one of these radio shows by a local doctor, an MD, who had opted out of the medical industry, the insurance side, the standardized medicine, and he had a clinic that focused on optimizing people's health instead of managing them to a standard. And everything he was describing to me on the radio was what I was experiencing, what I was doing. I mean, the symptoms of everything. And he gave these free seminars, and I went to one. It was on a Saturday morning, and I went and sat and listened to him. And there's something really critically important that I want to share here, but I'm telling this story as a lead-in so that people understand this. I went up and talked to him afterwards, and I said, how can you know all of this? It's exactly what I'm going through. He said, because men go through this, especially men, women to some degree, but go through this, regularly, but doctors don't either know how to treat it or they're not allowed to treat it. It's very easy. What you're talking about, I can fix easy. I said, easy? I've been to 3 of these clinics. He said, yeah, but they either don't know or they're not allowed to actually treat it. So the bottom line of this was I did some simple blood tests, found out that my testosterone and my thyroid were very low because of something called andropause. Now, I've even had nurses where I talk to nurses about andropause, and they look at me like, huh? I don't know what andropause is. And I find this remarkable because if you ask anybody what menopause is, they understand. Oh, menopause, yeah, that's that thing that women go through as they age. Well, men have andropause. It's the same situation. It's the natural aging process where your hormone levels decline, and your hormone levels are what govern a lot of your health. And yet, we are not taught. There is no focus. There's no kind of knowledge about what's going to happen to men over the age of 40. And he just looked and said, oh, yeah, we can supplement those with biologically identical hormones and with some thyroid supplement. And boom, within 6 months, I'm riding up mountain passes on a bicycle team in Canada. And so I went from not being able to walk up and down stairs without dressing for 20 minutes to being on a bicycle team riding up and down mountain passes. And that was the start of my journey of really discovering the value of focusing on health and wellness instead of standardized medicine. And so I kind of made a little bit of a list here of some thoughts that I have, and it starts with habits. If you want to know how to stay healthy, now, first off, disease happens. We are biological organisms. Disease can happen, right? You can be Lance Armstrong. You can be the healthiest, most supplemented. Some people criticize just how supplemented the guy was, but he had cancer because of a trauma. And I had a trauma from cycling. I understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
Any cycling, go ahead. You're going to say something?
Well, yeah, I in 2018, I didn't list as one of my goals to get prostate cancer. It wasn't on my, hey, let's shoot for this. Let's find out what and go through it. Stuff happens, life happens, disease happens, and I'll say, Val, and it's how you deal with it.
Well, right. And the healthier you are, the more successful you're likely to be able to deal with this. And just in the COVID situation, you take a look at who's really at risk. Now, I know there's outliers. They say, well, gee, I knew a guy that was 40 years old and he was so healthy and he got COVID and died. Okay. Well, there probably was some underlying thing. There had to be some reason, because the preponderance of the evidence is that healthy people, 99.8% of the people that contract this or that are out there don't die from this. But there are segments of the population, as you mentioned, specifically related to the strength of their immune system. Older people have weaker immune systems, and people who have cancer and people who have, are already sick, their immune systems are compromised by the battle they're fighting.
Right. I'm going to say this real quick again, and Val, we can get sharing. I have a few things I'd like to share, just some general tips. But again, optimizing health. Okay, I'm going to advocate. Yeah, if you've got a medical condition, or thank God the surgery I had a surgeon. I didn't have somebody that watched a YouTube video on it. It's like, hey, I think I can do this. I think you need to have a balance between medical doctors to take care of medical issues, but naturopathic and or clinical nutritionists, however you want to lay that out, to deal with the health side. Because again, what we're seeing with this COVID situation is all, quote, medical stuff, and there's a divergence of opinions, and I think a lot of it's a load of crap because they're government doctors and they're following CDC, WHO, which I don't listen to. But there's nothing on the naturopathic, or I'll just call it whole health or optimized health situation. And that's the voice we're missing in this, is how do you optimize your health so you don't get COVID? Don't go be afraid, hide in a closet, put a mask on, and stay 100 feet away from people. And I'm over exaggerating for a reason. How do you optimize your health? So you're not scared to go out in public. I'm still amazed when I go out and I'm walking on the sidewalk and somebody goes away, they got to either get out in the street or like, yeah, I'm this walking blob of COVID virus that somehow I'm going to walk by and boom, it's going to grab you and you're going to get it. People are absolutely paranoid out there, and it's completely irrational. I just go, wow. So balance.
You know, it is really true. And one of the things, if you're listening to our broadcast here, and if you're wanting to know truth and reason, let me just share something with you. Much of what we accept in the world is not done by design and with intent. And I'm going to give you this great example. I was just commenting earlier that one of the arguments that people have out there in social media, which is a place where people talk today, is that, well, of course masks work. Doctors and nurses wear them all the time in surgery, so they must work. Well, how did that get started? What's the science? Where are the studies behind that? Many years ago, some doctor came up with the idea, oh, gee, if I cover my mouth and do this and that, it's going to help these patients not get infected. And they did this as part of many different things that they were doing. And then it got picked up and somebody said, oh, that's what we should be doing. They started teaching this in medical schools. And it's just accepted that this is what you do if you're a doctor. And it becomes part of the prevention of liability. It doesn't have to do with science. It has to do with accepted standards and prevention of liability. They can't sue you and have you be liable for that. But they've actually done studies, and I published about 20 of them in an article today, literally studies in hospitals where they took teams of surgeons and said, okay, you guys aren't going to wear masks in surgery for 6 months. And then we're going to check and see what are the correlations in terms of infections. And what they found in all of these studies is that the masks didn't have anything to do with infections. They don't have anything to do with transmitting bacteria and viruses. And in some cases, they actually had less patient infections on the teams that didn't wear masks in these two comparative studies. And there have been many of these studies. This isn't like a one-off. There have been many of these studies where they've looked at this to the point where in some of these hospitals and situations now globally, they're telling you don't have to wear masks. In fact, it probably does more harm than good to you and the surrounding environment. But yet it is just accepted because it's just what you do. It's just the practice. And so I want to direct back here a little bit to habits. My father had some bad habits. I think a lot of our health starts with habits. And some of what we're talking about here, and I'm going to roll down through this quick so then you can come back and share. But obviously, if you drink to excess, if you smoke, if you take, drugs and stuff like that, probably not healthy. Your body's not designed for that. It's going to have a toll on you eventually, okay? So I want to talk about some specific things real quick. First off, one of the things that I learned, and I'm going to speak for Brad because Brad talks about it all the time, that we've learned is that you need to have a team. You got to have a team. You got to have your coaches. And my team that I like is chiropractor, acupuncturist, a doctor that has a background in naturopathy. Now, I happen to have a doctor that's both an MD and a naturopath, so I can kind of work both sides of that a little bit, okay? And it's great to have some coaches, like a trainer and a massage therapist, some things like that, because if you're out there and you're active, sometimes you got some strains, you got some issues, and you need somebody to help you design a workout program or something like that. This becomes your team of coaches to keep you healthy, okay? So then the next thing that I want to share with you is the importance of your gut. And most people don't know that about 80% or so of your immune system happens in your stomach and your intestines. It's the bacteria and the culture that gets built in there that affects your entire being. And so focus on making sure you're eating food products that build up your immune system, not deplete it. The second thing I want to share is exercise. Now, you don't have to be Olympic decathlete or something like that, but you've got to do some exercise to breathe, to clear your lungs, to keep your lung capacity up. You know, one of the biggest problems that elderly people face is they literally lose their lung capacity. They sit so much. They never actually exchange the air that's in the bottom of their lungs. It just sits there and putrefies. You've got to exchange that air, stretch your lungs, and being on a stationary bike or treadmills or ellipticals or whatever it is,
whatever, get out there.
Get your body moving for 30 minutes a day. Build this into your habits. I'm going to tell you, I'm really bad at this. I love my cycling, but as I've gotten a little bit older, I've had some issues. I've had some injuries with hands and things that make my outdoor cycling more difficult. And I tend to just sit and work all the time. I just get absorbed in what I'm doing. We've got a lot of exciting things going on. But again, I've had to rebuild my habits. Vitamins. Supplements are so important. And if anybody who's telling you that supplements don't matter, I'm telling you that is an ignorant person. Do not listen to them, because the foods you ate, first off, many of our farmlands, and I used to be an organic farmer, one of the many things I've done, we spent as much time building up the soil as we did growing the vegetables. And I can tell you that much of our farmland are depleted in specific nutrients, and much of our fruit and vegetables are picked green. They are not fully ripened. They don't have the full complement of all of the nutrients that your body can use to optimize. The other thing is that you don't have access because of the places you live. Let's say you live in Washington State, in the northern climate. You don't naturally have access to all of the most optimal fruits and vegetables and nutrients in the world. So a really good supplement system helps with that.
Big time.
The next thing that I want to mention, and I'm almost done here, I want to turn this back over to Brett, is vitamin D. We increasingly are living in an indoor world. And you can look at populations of people and you can say, why do Latinos not have many of these diseases that non-Latino cultures do? This is just an example. Their weight is body mass indexes are higher often. They tend to eat diets that have quite a few carbs and things like that. And yet they don't experience historically a lot of the diseases and things that non-Latino cultures do. Well, first off, just as a group, they tend to work outside more. They get a lot more vitamin D. They tend to be more active in their work historically, okay? They also don't smoke as much. As a culture, they don't smoke as much as other cultures do. And so even though they may have some negatives, you know, quote unquote, the positives overwhelm so much. And a big piece of this is vitamin D. In especially the more northern you get, the vitamin D levels that we have are horribly insufficient. And so in the summertime, I'm suggesting people habits. I carve out 20 minutes a day and I take my shirt off and I wear a pair of shorts and I go outside in the summertime and I sit in the sun 20 minutes a day. And I don't wear sunscreen because I don't want the chemicals in the sunscreen in my bloodstream. Okay? I'm not going to stand out there to roast on the beach for 5 hours. That's not what I'm doing. I'm building up vitamin D and I'm conditioning my skin. And then in the wintertime, I supplement heavily with vitamin D3. And you can go online and do research and figure out the appropriate levels. I don't eat a whole bottle every time. In fact, I use drops of vitamin D3.
About that, okay.
Yeah, my drug abuse. Yeah, I'm that guy that never smoked it and never, you know, inhaled or anything. I literally have never. My joke is when I was dating was I'm a half a beer guy looking for a beer and a half girl. So I'm like the least drug guy, the most, you know, health conscious guy without being totally freak. I wish I was more. But my point being is I use vitamin D3 drops. They assimilate easier. A lot of times with vitamins, certain vitamins that you take in pills go into your stomach and they never get into your bloodstream. So there are some of these that are better to take. But go online, do some studying, work with a nutritionalist, get some of this information. Go take some blood tests. And if you're over the age of 40 and you're a guy especially, but a gal too, but I'm a guy, so I'm speak from that experience, you need to be focusing on measuring your hormone levels. Because as those start to drop, which they will do eventually, different people are different rates, you are going to start experiencing avoidable health problems. All you need to do is to take, you know, have some your doctor give you a prescription for compounded biological identical hormones, not the drug hormone, which is a mask, but biological identical hormones. And there's different ways that you can take those, and that's the key. All right. And so those are my points. Brad, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Share some of yours, please.
Well, I'm gonna go back. So our company, our business, we have some awesome health related products. So reach out to us there, and they work really well with my situation, which is why I was excited about them. But there's a lot of good products out there. You want to get high quality products. Yes, I take liquid vitamin D like Val, but I'm going to say, just to preface this, make sure you go in and have a physical. Okay, I avoided these for years because I didn't want to go into the doctor because I didn't want they're going to find something wrong like cancer. So I can say that with a smile on my face now, but go see your doctor regularly, get a checkup. But if you can, go work with either a naturopathic doctor or a clinical nutritionist so they can help assess, you know, blood tests, but assess your diet. Okay, you can see this is clinical nutritionist. Water, 28 ounces of water, 1/4 tablespoon of Himalayan pink salt for hydration. Now that sounds counterintuitive, but water, most of us don't drink enough. You need to drink enough water. You need to hydrate properly. So I'm going to say start out with water. And the other thing, just some general advice, a whole food diet is going to go a long way toward it. Again, if you can work with a naturopath or a clinical nutritionist to dial it in for you, eating real food, that's huge, guys. You know, eat meat, seafood, eggs, vegetables, fruit, natural fats, herbs, spices, and seasonings. Okay, those are okay. Eat foods with simple or recognizable list of ingredients or no ingredients at all because they're whole and unprocessed. Stay away from processed foods. And I have been able to find, I'm not supposed to eat so much carbohydrates, but I found a potato chip that is just potatoes, olive oil or avocado oil, and Himalayan salt for potato chips, and it's hard to find those. If you're going to eat potato chips, again, 3 ingredients. I can cover those with my thumb. But you got to look, you got to be specific. All the other, you want to stay away from the processed oils, you know, the cottonseed oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, although your body can't process those very well. So you want to stay away from the artificial oils. Olive oil, avocado oil are fine, but don't consume added sugar, real or artificial. I'll say probably one of the biggest culprits we have, stay away from carbonated sugar drinks, soda pop, whatever you want to call it, soda pop, whatever. That stuff is absolutely junk for your body. Don't drink it. Even if it says diet, that's even worse because of the chemicals. But you know, you got maybe watch your maple syrup. But I'm just giving you some general stuff: agave, nectar, coconut sugar. You won't really want to watch your sugar intake, but watch for the added sugars. Most products are chock full. You get some of these like Red Bull Exit energy drink, maxed out on carbohydrates and sugar. That is a terrible product for your body. Stay away from stuff like that. And I'll say moderate use. My naturopath told me you can do things in moderation. She goes, if you're 80% on this diet, you're okay. But you know, watch your consumption of alcohol, or even with cooking. I like to use a little bit of cooking sherry with some grilled halibut we're going to do tonight for the sauce, but watch it out. No tobacco products either. Don't eat grains. Again, check with the nutrition, but these grains convert to carbohydrates, and which convert to sugar. But you want to minimize your input of grains. And then they recommend not eating most forms of legumes. You know, black beans, red kidney beans, garbanzo. That I have to admit, I'm a little bit guilty with stuff there. But again, not heavy on this stuff. Don't eat dairy. Again, about 65% of Americans are lactose intolerant. I'm not missing anything, but cow, sheep, or goat's milk, you know, cream cheese, yogurt, sour cream, ice cream. And guess what's in ice cream? Lots and lots of sugar, frozen yogurt even. So these are things to just be aware of in your diet. And don't consume carrageenan, MSG, or sulfites. You know, if these ingredients appear on any label form, watch out. Again, stay away from the highly processed foods, and that's going to be most fast food too. And then don't consume baked goods, junk foods. That's huge in the American diet, or treats with approved ingredients. You know, it's just all the junk foods, the cinnamon rolls, bread. Bread is, I eat very little, if any, bread, because again, that's grains turns into glucose, which is a sugar. It's also inflammatory. It creates inflammation. But most of it's just, I'd say my biggest bottom line would be stay away from the junk food. Don't go to McDonald's. Don't buy candy. Don't eat the candy bars. Don't eat, you know, potato chips or Cheetos, whatever. I know they're good. Doritos, they taste great, but that is a processed food. It's not good for your body. So again, really, you won't go wrong if you stay with a whole food diet. I will recommend, this book came out years ago just as a resource, Whole 30. There's actually some really good recipes in there too, which is cool. You got to find what works for you. But again, Val, it's habits. We've been trained as Americans. Look at the commercials, all about candies and McDonald's and Burger King and all these other things, which, yeah, they taste good. Pizza. You know, you can go to Costco and I can get a cauliflower crust pizza, which again, because it's cauliflower, natural, not, I can eat that. And that we put some pepperoni on it and that, but I don't add anything else. It does have a little bit of cheese. Okay, see, I can cheat a little bit, but I'm not going to Domino's or Pizza Hut or Papa John's. I have to stay away from that stuff. Now, I know in America that's like sacrilege or heresy, but to start eating right, you have to plan, and we plan our meals. That's what I'll just say for tonight. We're having, Val, and I wish you guys could come over. I had to take out a second mortgage to do this, but fresh Alaskan halibut, I'm going to grill. Asparagus, it's going to be with olive oil, some garlic, and lemon juice, fresh squeezed lemon. Salad, and I'm going to do some shrimp. Okay. Not going to pile the cheese on. It's not going to be cooked in a milk or cream sauce, but just real whole food. And it's a planned diet. We do a lot of turkey burgers. I have found beef with my new griddle, the Brown Chuck, where it makes some really good burgers, but I don't put cheese on mine. I don't heavily season my burgers. And I have to admit, I do cheat a little bit. I do have some ketchup and I have some fries occasionally, but I'm not eating, that's not my lunch. I go to McDonald's or Jack in the Box and get an ultimate cheeseburger with fries for lunch. I don't do that. So you have to plan, but eat whole carrot sticks, celery sticks for snacks. Just some ideas.
Yep. Well, we do a lot the same. Like you say, we have a couple of places we like, a couple of things we like, and we use those as cheat treats, right?
Yep.
In fact, we went to Arby's last night. They got a $6 deal going, and we got some euros. And but it's not what we do all the time. You know, we eat mostly. We go to the store, and our basket is full of fruits and vegetables and chicken and things like that. And along that line, I got to share with you something else that I have learned. People a lot of times really focus on fruit. They really like fruit. They eat a lot of fruit. Okay. Now, your body's not typically designed to eat a lot of fruit. Our bodies are because fruits are acidic. Our bodies are designed to eat vegetables more. Now, and because of the sugars also. I just want to share that people can think about how a human would tend to eat in the wild. And what does that diet look like? It's a diet of a variety of things, but in most places, fruits are only available in season, in the late summer, during the summer months. And when those fruits, and in the fall, when they're really eating a lot of fruit, what are they doing? In nature, they're packing on weight like a bear for the winter, right? They're eating berries, they're eating all that stuff they can because they're trying to put on weight in nature to go through the winter. Well, we don't have that issue. We don't have to worry about putting on weight. We worry more about eating too much and having to take off weight. So, limit your amount of fruits versus vegetables. Learn to eat more vegetables.
High glycemic, and this is what my clinical nutritionist. I love pineapple, really do, but it's got a lot of sugar. So I've got to like eating like maybe Granny Smith apples, not as much sugar. Blueberries, raspberries, those are pretty good. Strawberries, because there's not as much sugar. Pears, Bartlett pears are coming in season. I love them. Those are good because one, there's fiber in it, and it's lower in sugar. Cantaloupe, pretty good too, but I stay away from the real sugary fruits. But the other thing to avoid is these fruit juice drinks, guys, because they're chock full of sugar, packed with sugar, and there's no fiber in it. That's why you're better to eat a fruity, sugary fruit because there's fiber in it that helps mitigate the sugar. But if you're just drinking, so I'd say avoid pineapple juice, orange juice, apple juice, all those guys, because they're too much sugar for your body. So Val, yeah, you're good message there. Yeah.
And I readily admit my name's Val and I'm a carbaholic. I mean, I love donuts and stuff like that, and ice cream. Oh Lord, I literally, if I get out of control, like I was last summer, I literally will go buy one of those big tubs of ice cream, and Ems doesn't really eat that stuff much, and like a week later, it's gone. I mean, literally, I'm eating one of those big, you know what I'm talking about, those big 2-gallon tubs, and I'm eating one of those things every week because I love ice cream. I love that stuff. I used to love in the evening to eat a big bowl of cereal before I go to bed. It's like the worst thing you can do nutritionally. So yeah, I know what we're dealing with here, but I've changed my habits to a large degree, and I'm constantly working on that. And so what do I do when I go to the store right now? I buy dates and cashew. Those are my snacks. If I want something
nuts are good. Peanuts, but yeah, cashews, dates, nuts
I got it
for you.
Yeah, if I get a little, what we call a sweet tooth, if I feel like, I want something, I'll go eat 3 or 4 dates. They're really sugary. It's probably not something you can do a lot of, Brad, but like I said,
moderation, but better than having a bag of gummy bears or Sour Patch.
Yeah,
they're awesome, but those are not good.
No, right. So there are. I'm just saying, if you study it and think about it, there are some natural things that you can do. So there are options that you can do to kind of help your body cheat a little bit. And that's kind of how I got to the point where I tricked myself, is I focus, and my meals, I tend to eat a big meal in the morning, and then I try and not, last night being an exception, and I way overdid it. Like I'm not good on portion control. Never have been. But I try and eat my bigger meal in the morning and not maybe have a salad in the evening. And it can be I tend to eat pretty big salads, but again, if you were to take a great big salad and boil that down, cook that down, you'd find out that it was about that much. There's not a lot of substance there. So again, salads help fill you up. Salads with peppers and a lot of things
too, because again, most all dressings that go maybe a balsamic or even just lemon juice and olive oil or something, most salad dressings have sugar. They have like canola or sunflower oil, which is a processed oil. Not good for you. I do cheat a little bit, but I don't put a lot of dressing on mine. But just be aware again, in most salad dressings, they are processed. And one of the biggest no ingredients is going to be the oil they use, sunflower or canola or something, which again, you should avoid if you can. But
and again, dressing, I'm a ranch dressing fan. I love ranch dressing, but they're not all created equal. And if you read through some of them, you go, oh, wait a minute, this one's got a lot more natural ingredients and a lot more ingredients than that other one.
Do buy the better quality ingredient one if you can, and then moderation. It's ranch dressing on everything. I pour my omelet in the morning, I put ranch dressing on it. My potato, I soak it with ranch dressing. I douse my salad with it. Just moderation. But again,
I can remember growing up, my kids would put ranch dressing on pizza. They put ranch dressing on everything. They love it.
But you have to spend extra time. You have to do your due diligence and shop for ingredients. We look at labels on stuff. And Joni, I'll be looking at something going, what do you think? Those sugar grams, probiotics, there's some good stuff. PCC has a kombucha. If you don't like kombucha, there's some good ones. Not all of them are created equal. Some of the ones in the stores are junk because there's too much sugar. PCC has a kombucha. Actually, I think it's Puget Sound Kombucha Company. It's got 4 grams of sugar in it, which is super low. That's pretty good. 6 grams, not bad, but 4, that's a good drink. That probiotic drink, kombucha, is actually really good for you too.
And Jeunesse has some great products. They've really done a lot of work on staying on the leading edge. There are good products and good companies out there. Of course, we're partial because we picked one because of not only the quality of the products, but the complement and everything else. But this is a subject that is going to be a focus of our attention for a couple of weeks. My dear friend Shelley Renault is going to join us next weekend. She is
Awesome.
a health and wellness expert. She operates a health and wellness clinic in Mystic, Connecticut.
Wow.
And she's my lifelong friend, my bestie. Fell in love with her when I was 17. She was 15, and I've loved her ever since. She's just an awesome person. I'm super excited to have her join us and share with us her views and her thoughts on alternative medicine, because her clinic is all alternative medicine stuff.
Tune in, because that's going to be great, guys. This is the side of the story that we're not getting, that I can say as I guess the guy that's dealing, I'm not a cancer survivor, but I'm having to deal with it. Pay attention, because this information is going to be valuable. We're not charging for it. It's free. So take the time, join us, because I know you're going to learn a lot from this for sure. I am too. I'm excited about it.
Okay, guys, have a great week. We're excited. There's a lot of fun stuff going on, and stay tuned.
All right. See you, Val.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It is the Saturday morning show. September, I almost said June. How weird is that, dude?
You're off a few months.
Well, because I was just reading this study partly. Where did the summer go? But it is September 5th, 2020, and Brad and Val are here, as my mother used to say, with bells on, did people used to wear bells or something?
I didn't, to my knowledge, so I
No,
don't
I
know.
can't remember that, you know. So,
Maybe
yeah,
at Christmas time, but
yeah, maybe that's what, maybe it was a holiday thing, so everybody's festive. Everybody, we've spent the last couple of weeks talking about nutrition with a particular emphasis on the immune system and this absurd situation where the government and all of these experts, and I'm going to use the big air quotes on that one, because after this morning, you're going to realize that most of these experts are leading people down a very merry path, so to speak. But you know, everybody's talking about masks and social distancing, and by gosh and by golly, we have to have a vaccine. And you're going to be forced to take it, or you can't travel, you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't, by gosh and by golly, do anything unless you have this vaccine, because you are in mortal danger. Well, theater there, right? Because that's what they feel like they're doing. And nobody's talking about your immune system. Nobody's talking about, hey, get healthy and increase your ability to fight off all kinds of diseases, right? Brad, you've had experience with that. I've had experience with that in my life, both.
Yep.
And so we spent 2 weeks talking last weekend. My best friend forever, Shelly, and I always want to say Shelly Boris because that was her name when we were kids, but Shelly Renault, who I've known for my whole life, came on, and you've got a deep experience in health and wellness. Operates a health and wellness clinic spa up in Rhode Island, Mystic, Connecticut area.
Rhode Island.
Yeah, beautiful area up there. It's really nice. I spent a bunch of time back there when her son got married, and I went back there for about a week and just had a blast. But anyway, one of the products, or one of the things that she mentioned, had to do with combining boron, silicone, and some other essential micro mineral nutrients, and how important these were. She mentioned a product, and we went and checked, and it's not even available anymore. It was something that used to be, right? But so Shelly and I did some research, and we came up with another product. And the product we came up with, and you can see this, it's Life Extension Bone Restore with vitamin K12. And I did some research.
I can't imagine you doing that, Val.
No. Me do research.
I'm shocked.
And it turns out that for male health, boron is actually very important, although you don't need a lot of it, but it's super important. And I'd never, and I've studied especially male health for years.
Right.
Never heard that before. And so, Shelly, my love, thank you so much, my dear friend, for bringing that up in a side conversation. And so I went and did some research. And so what it comes to the recommendation is that men should be taking about 6 milligrams of boron per day.
So here's my question. So tell me about, because I'm always curious on good products. You've done your research. I trust you. You're one that you are a nerdy guy in that aspect, Val, and I love you for that. I'm not quite as nerdy, but I am a nerdy guy. Where do you get this stuff? What's the good quality? Where do you get this?
I did a bunch of research, and I think I explained on the show that Shelly's always my litmus test. You know, if there's some product that comes out, or even products that we're looking at representing, right? Mm-hmm. And full disclosure here, Brad and I are reps for a company called Jeunesse. It's a leading edge health and wellness, and we're not here promoting that per se, but it comes up in the conversation once in a while. Right. And Kelly actually had mentioned that she'd heard some really good things about Jeunesse, and obviously we're big fans. But I ran this past her, and she went down and looked at everything, and she said, "Yeah, that's good." In fact, she can call and correct me if I'm wrong, but she not only did she say, "Yeah, that looks good," but I think I'm going to switch over from several different things that I take over to that, because it's got a more combined. So got it on Amazon, to answer your question, a long answer, and it was relatively inexpensive. And this is not expensive stuff.
Boron, tell me what it is, because I want to write that
Well,
down.
this is Life Extension Bone Restore with vitamin K12. And it has boron in it, but only 3 milligrams of boron.
The Life Extension Restore, it's got K12 and it's on Amazon. Okay.
Yeah, it's
All right.
D3, K12, calcium, which is not really, we don't really normally need calcium so much because it's not easily absorbed. But the
That's
things in your health.
I had not heard that because I've been, take CalMag, you need calcium for your bones, but as much as I've been aware of and read up on it, I did not know that calcium doesn't get absorbed and that it's not really the best thing for your bones. I was
Most people say, well, like osteoporosis and things like that. Those are actually hormone problems. They're not a lack of calcium problem. Most people in this country have plenty of calcium, but it doesn't get absorbed very easily, and it has to be in combined with certain kinds of things. And I'm not an expert on that. I just know that much. But this has all these things in it, and super important. We're talking about immune systems and things like this. This has magnesium, zinc, and manganese in it. These are very important minerals. Obviously, everybody's talking about
zinc is a big one that comes up with COVID and all that. I think you mentioned that, zinc.
Yeah.
So.
Big deal. And silicon, if you will, silicon and boron. But it only has 3 milligrams. And so I actually looked on there, and Life Extensions also has a 3 milligram boron, because I just picked up, I really wasn't looking for it. I just stumbled into these things that they're really highly recommending men to consume 6 milligrams of boron a day. And I will tell you, and this is anecdotal, right? There's no double-blind study here. But for me, I have felt a perceptible difference this week in my human male experience since I started taking that product. So that sounds like an infomercial. I have absolutely no interest. I'm not on any affiliate program or anything like that with these guys. I'm just telling you that this looks like it's a product that has potentially some value to our audience. So there we go.
Good to know. Well, we're here to add value in whatever way we can. And I think part of, I have to say this because this is on my heart. Great link on social media yesterday on LinkedIn by a gal named Shay Rowbottom, who I've been following a bit. But what people do, Val, like us that are on social media, we tend to always try to pitch our product, and that is the exact opposite of what you should be trying to do. So we're here to add value first. Hopefully we're doing that. And I'm very aware of, I rarely talk about what I do. My video yesterday on YouTube was a subtle reference to link with us and partner with us if you're interested, but most of it is geared toward general information, adding value to people. I think we do a good job of that. We're not here to pitch our company. We've mentioned it. I'm not going to mention it again, but yeah.
Well, and we love coming on here. This has become a passion of mine. I think Brad's too. I really look forward to this time on Saturday morning when we can come and talk about some of the things that are going on. And for me, a couple of reasons for that. First off, I don't think there are enough people talking about truth out there. And I'm not talking about anecdotal things like, gee, everybody wore masks, it must work. Everybody's wearing masks, the numbers are going down, it must be the masks, right? I mean, there's a lot of that out there. People go, well, obviously the masks work. Look, everybody's wearing masks and now the numbers are going down. There could be 1,000 reasons for that, but this symbolism has become. And somebody asked me the other day, why am I so against masks and so frustrated with masks? It's no big deal. He said, it's the symbolism of it. We're going to get into this more in just a minute. That this event and the path that government chose to take is going to and has cost the lives of 130 million people. That's twice the number of people that died in World War II. 130 million, principally children and women overseas in impoverished areas because of the collapse, the artificial collapse of economies. And people shrug off that mask and say, well, it's just not a big deal. It's the representation of what that mask is that offends me. That it's absolutely worthless. It does nothing. And there's no science behind it whatsoever. In fact, All of the science refutes it. All of the math refutes it. And yet we are being pushed. And in the state of Washington right now, where Brad and I live, the governor is doubling down on this. We're about this far short of this guy telling us we have to wear it in our homes. And neighbors, if you happen to peek through the windows and you don't see somebody wearing a mask, call the police. I mean, we're about that far from it. Because now you can't even go out anywhere supposedly without wearing a mask. And yet, what's going on with the numbers, Brad? Tell me what's going on with the numbers.
Well, they're going down. I will say this, because I'm not big in numbers, but we went out to dinner last night, Anthony's home port, and nobody talks about getting on airplanes and how come social distancing. I'm still trying to figure out how come social distancing doesn't matter on airplanes, guys.
It's a smart virus, Brad. It's a really smart virus.
I'm gonna keep beating that one till you say, Brad, shut up. But I'm just going at that. We went to dinner at Anthony's home port. Like we hadn't been there. I hadn't been there in probably over 6 months. Went out with Terry and Kathy. Got to wear a mask to go in there and get all the way up to the table. When you get up to the table, you can take it off.
It's theater, isn't it? It's like a kabuki theater.
What does 1 + 1 equal? I don't know. I'm just going. The waiter was wearing a mask, but we could sit there without him. He had to wear it coming in when he checked in and go to the upper level. Their lower levels closed, but the restaurant upstairs was actually pretty full. But again, one of these things, I see the inconsistencies. It's like either this is a real deal and you need to wear masks for some medically proven reason, you need to social distance for some medically proven reason, or if you don't and there's all kinds of inconsistencies, I start going, this doesn't make sense. And it never has to me. I'm sorry.
It doesn't make any sense.
You did the numbers for night, but I just said from the get-go, I'm like, this just doesn't. You can call it Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, said if you tell a lie long enough, people believe it. And I think if you call this a pandemic long enough, and I have to chuckle at your friend Louis Stotella, who that guy, I wondered, are you just reading the same thing or are you just dense? I didn't respond, but that guy is like, I mean,
people believe something, and Adam Raker said something a few weeks ago. He said, it's a lot easier to deceive someone than later on to convince them that they've been deceived. It's easy to deceive somebody. All you have to do is be in a position of authority or wave around some anecdotal thing that says experts say, or to introduce some guy named Tony Fauci and say this is the foremost expert in infectious diseases in the United States, and he says we should do this and this and this, right? And people who have an understanding of these things step back and we listen to this and we go, seriously? They're telling you need to wear that mask. To some people who
going in to get your hair cut, then you don't have to wear one.
Yes, unless you're a politician, and then if it's against the law in the state of New York, you're the governor or the mayor or the whatever. All you got to do is sneak across the border into a state that it's not against the law, and you don't have to wear it when you're going out to dinner. You go over, and when you get caught, you know what you say? Well, it's because it's a lot worse in New York or whatever. It's just bunk. It's lies. It's BS. And if you're tuning into this and you think, and this is the first time here, you think these guys are a bunch of radical tinfoil hat guys. Well, that might be true, but it's got nothing to do with the truth and the reality of this situation. And we've been talking about this from day one because I have subject matter expert in masks and things like that. And as soon as they started talking about that, I personally looked at that and I said, wait a minute, that same government that's telling you now that you have to wear that or you can't open your business, a month ago was telling us if you give that to your employee in any kind of a hazardous material situation, it's against the law. We will fine you $30,000 per mask and per occurrence, and we'll force you out of business. So they ought to, something flipped here because now all of a sudden that same mask that's illegal is required. And that would make somebody stop and scratch their head a little bit, but everybody just follows along. Everybody follows along. So let's talk a little bit. And we've talked about some of the numbers. Brad and I, you've been talking about this for months.
Mhm.
And I shared that article with you last night, and this is going around social media. You can find it. I'm going to tell you exactly. I will post the links to this article and the study. See, I got a personal thing. An article comes out, and I'm going, okay, fine, an article. I don't really care about the article so much. Let me find a reference to a study. And I actually had to dig a little bit to find the study, the publication of the study in a scientific journal, and then bring it out. Okay. So
Okay.
this is, it says, controversial California study claims Americans are overestimating their risk of getting coronavirus and that the odds of infection are about 1 in 4,000. Now, I don't know why it's controversial. These are researchers from Stanford University and UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, right? University of Southern California. Okay. This is what they found. They looked at the 100 most populous U.S. counties. So they weren't checking out, South Wyoming someplace, right? The 100 most populous counties, May 30th, so right towards the end of the peak, right?
Okay.
They calculated that someone who has a single contact with an infected person has a 1 in 3,836 chances of getting sick themselves. So almost 4,000. 1 in 4,000 chance. If you come in contact with somebody who's got the virus, you got a 1 in 4,000 chance of getting sick. For Americans between the ages 50 to 64, now you're getting up into the, under the age of 50.
We're 60, you're 65?
Watch it. I'm a 35. Just keep saying 30. I'm gonna get a t-shirt. I'm 35 in my head.
All right.
So we're talking about the probability that if you come in contact with somebody, now isn't this what the whole mask social distancing thing is about? This, it's ridiculous.
Well, Val, this begs the question that I've asked from the beginning. How many of you, if you're listening, how many people do you know that have COVID-19? I don't know anybody. I know zero people.
I actually worked with a guy before it was a thing. They thought it was the flu. Back in January or 1st of February, someplace right there. I can't remember the exact date, but it was real early.
Yeah.
He had COVID-19.
Right.
He just was sick for a couple of days, a little bit. His wife was actually sick. She's got some serious underlying health issues. People have heard me talk about this before.
Right.
But this guy was around the office. He was working with us. He just thought he had the little cough, little flu thing, We were eating donuts out of the same box, sitting in meetings.
Uh-oh.
Nobody else in the office got sick. None of his friends or family got sick. And his church is super active in church. Nobody in his church got sick. So, now we didn't even find out about this until 2 months afterwards because of his wife's underlying serious health issues. Mm-hmm. When the tests all came out, they said, well, we want you guys to get tested. They got tested and said, well, you got antibodies. You both have had it. They thought, well, it must have been that thing, that sickness. We had the flu, That's what they were calling it in November, December, January.
Yeah. Well, Joni and I came back. We went down to Hollywood in January. We both were sick that week after we got back. Excuse me, maybe semi-fluish conditions. We didn't know, but we got over it in probably 3 days. We don't know if that was COVID or not, but we were both sick when we got back from, of course, I'm telling my chiropractor, he's going, you let your immune system get down. I'm going, yeah, okay.
Well, you're going to be in a plane, you get bombarded,
Yeah, so we don't know if we did or not, but surprisingly, we were both sick. This was early, mid-January of this year, so we don't know if it was COVID or not, but we both.
So you've never been tested? No. You don't know? Okay.
Don't know.
So let's keep going down here because we got a ton of fun things to talk about today, but this is really important. For Americans between the ages of 50 to 64, we're just starting to get up there into the risk classes, all right? Below that, you know, it's infinitesimally small numbers. But even as we get into the risk classes, the risk of being hospitalized is 1 in 852,000. The risk of dying, 1 in 19.1 million.
It's kind of risky, Val.
Now,
No.
I want everybody to understand what these numbers represent, because this is really important. What is happening out there is that everything that sneezes, coughs, limps, or has hiccups is coded as COVID-19, because the hospitals get, I've heard different numbers, $30,000 to $50,000 more money from the government if it's a COVID-19 related. So even if they don't even have to run a test, people, they can list it as suspected. If they're suspected as having COVID-19, they don't even have to list it. It's just, yep, they check the box.
Follow the money.
There have been many, countless numbers of people who have cropped up on social media that said, I'm really hacked off. My grandmother died. She got run over by a car. So whatever happened. And her death certificate said COVID-19. She didn't die from COVID-19.
Follow the money.
And the median, the average person that has died from COVID-19 is 80. The median death age is 83. And of all of the people that have died that have been coded somewhere attributed COVID-19, most of them have more than 2.6. The average, some of them have far more, but the average is 2.6 comorbidities. In other words, here's the big point. This is a nursing center. This is a hospice disease for the most part. That's where I've read the statistic. 90% of the people that have died from this have been in hospice or nursing care with long-term dire prognosis. They're dying from something. They contract it there because those environments are perfect for spreading viruses of all kinds. And anybody will tell you that the last place that you want to be, one of the most transmittable areas, is a hospital. Right? I mean, this is well known that more people die from stuff that they pick up in hospitals and medical centers because that's where the sick people are. Yeah. So if at all possible, keep your immune system in great shape, and that's the last place you want to go. Just makes sense, right? But 1 in 19.1 million, these are people who actually died from COVID, right? That it wasn't, they had, cancer and emphysema and high blood pressure and, all these other things. And, oh, by the way, when they were in hospice with 3 weeks to live, we think they got COVID, so we're going to code it that. So if I sound cynical, I'm sorry, but let's just read a couple of these things here. I'm going to read a statement. This is part of this article. The team says action from governments, social media, and the lack of feeling in control may be influencing the perception of risk. And like I said, I'm going to post where this study is, and there's a lot of information here. But these guys are saying just that there's no reason for the public to be running around like this. It's so rare. Average person between age of 50 and 64, the odds of being hospitalized with the virus after having a single contact is 1 in 852,000. The risk of fatality even small, 1 in 19.1 million chance of dying from COVID, based on the results through the end of May. Shocking, isn't it? It's what they've put us all through. And you can say that, well, they didn't know. They were acting in our best interest based on best knowledge. And I'm going to say, I'm sorry. I'm not buying that. And I'm not buying the novel coronavirus thing. This is not a novel coronavirus. It is not novel. is not new. This is COVID-2. It's SARS-CoV-2. The number 2 meaning it's not novel.
And Val, I'm going to say something that's going to sound very cynical, but if we get into the second section of this, I think I'm going to validate this. I will go so far as to say the government rarely acts in our best interest, the public's best interest. They act in what's best for the government, and we'll get into inflation, what's best for the World Banks, the IMF, all these other, they act in their own selfish best interest. If it happens to help us out, great, but I'm not a big believer. I don't look to the government for taking care of my self-interest. I'm not like the generation like my father who grew up under the Great Depression, who thought that FDR was like the savior, did so immense amount of good where they trust and believe everything, almost everything the government says and does. I don't, sorry, not sorry.
You know, it is absolutely preposterous. So let's shift. You know, I don't want to bang that drum too long, but we've been talking about it for weeks. But the more and more and more studies that come out about this, the metrics, the numbers, prove that you and I and people who believe like us, who have actually been watching and thinking and counting and paying attention, have been right since February when this first started being
right.
We've been right at every turn. The government has been wrong at every turn. There's nothing, I can't think of anything the government, any government, South Dakota being the exception, have done that has been right about this event.
Well, sadly to say, I want to make 2 comments on this. I am saddened and angered by what's been allowed to happen, and this is in my own city. You're in this area too, Val. That's completely wrong, completely twisted. But I am in an age group. I'm 60 years old. I've got stage 4 prostate cancer. I've got hypertension as a result of the medications I'm on. I should be afraid of this. I have never had fear. Now, maybe that's because of my Christian faith, but I'm not saying this lightly or I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, flippantly, but I am not afraid of this, and I'm in a group that should be, but I don't go out walking with a mask on. I see a lot of people when they see me, you know, on the other side of the street, they pull their masks up, and I'm going, you probably saved hundreds of lives in doing that. I'm not trying to be flippant, but it's just the knee-jerk silliness of people. Guys, I'm in an age group I should be concerned about. I'm not. I think my health, my immune system is adequately built up. It can always be better. But with 60 years old, with stage 4 prostate cancer, not just I got a cut on my arm, okay, hypertension, I should be afraid, and I am not, okay? Not.
Well, and we live in Seattle.
Yeah.
And Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Los Angeles, you can go any major city. There are thousands and thousands of people living on the streets here.
Yeah. Sadly.
They don't wear masks. They don't wash. They don't do social distancing. I mean, you know, during the peak of this, when the government was screaming, you have these encampments of people, and they're all sitting around. It's like when we were kids, we heard about the Depression. We heard about Hobo Junction or whatever, you know. And then that's what it's like. They're all sitting around in tents that they bought at REI, and they're drinking and having a good time and talking and playing the guitar or whatever. I'm driving by these things. Now, if the government really thought, if they thought that this was a pandemic, that this was a infectious nightmare, they'd have been in there cleaning those things up. They'd be getting rid of those situations. They would say, no, we got to get these people off the streets. They're not social distancing. They're not wearing masks. There's been none of that. In fact, the opposite happens. They've encouraged riots and huge public. And didn't they
protests? I'm not against protests, but when you're burning down buildings and cars and doing property damage, that is rioting. That is not protesting. That is not right. It's sad. It's a travesty what's been allowed to happen in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco in the name of, quote, the First Amendment or whatever it is. No, but I agree with you, Al. Yeah, if it were that big of a concern, but nobody's out there talking about these poor homeless people. My gosh, there should be thousands dead because of COVID-19. Haven't heard that news story.
Isn't it obvious that the bulk, or let's say many thousands and tens of thousands of people in the population know that this is absolute stupidity, because they're out there violating all of the social distancing things to riot and burn buildings and do that stuff, okay?
Flying airplanes.
Every time you turn around flying in airplanes, you rotten, nasty people flying in airplanes. Every time you turn around, there's some politician that's sneaking across state lines to have dinner with his family or something like that because he doesn't want to wear a mask, or she's from San Francisco. He's from San Francisco. Where was the beauty salon that Nancy Pelosi went to? Tell me again. Los Angeles. Wasn't it Los Angeles?
I don't know. I think it was San Francisco. I believe it was.
Nancy Pelosi. Okay.
I'm trying to get away from that stuff, but the story, I was just like, okay, here is hypocrisy showcased. You're not mad. You're mad because you got caught. And now you're doing the stuff and saying, well, this or that. You got caught with your pants down. Nancy just admitted. Politicians cannot admit fault.
I thought maybe she snuck to Los Angeles, but you're right.
I think it was San Francisco, and then they tried to blame the salon owner, who said, yeah, she's basically been shut down for 6 months. She's looking to move out of the town that she's lived in for 12 years because it's just dire.
So as we make a shift over to economics, can I give a little shout out to somebody that I've admired for a long time? We don't usually do this, but Jessica Higdon is a social media influencer. She's married to a guy named Ray Higdon, and Jessica is somebody that I've followed for a long time. She's brilliant. I've enjoyed her stuff so much. She's one of the people, her, Lisa Irby, of course, I follow Kathleen Degelman, who's a friend of mine, and a couple of other people that I've really followed as I've watched and learned leading edge production techniques for social media, basically. Creating content in that. And I learned a lot from those guys. Well, Jessica Higdon took a pretty hard stance this week in her, one of her posts, and it was more than just a post. It was a pretty involved thing that she put out there to her many of thousands of followers. And I just thought, Jessica, gutsy move, my friend. Gutsy move. Appropriate, strong. I mean, she just stepped out there and said, look, this is bunk, this is crazy what's happening. Because we live in a world right now, Brad, where everybody is kissing the tuchus of everybody that's upsetting. The agitators are out there in mass numbers, and we've got, all the football people and the basketball people and the politicians and everybody's kissing the tuchus of these people and putting the names of criminals on their football helmets and things like that because nobody wants to offend the mob, anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there. We need more people in influencing positions to step up and say the truth, speak the truth.
So please post that link now, and I'm gonna step out so far to say this because I am a guy. I'm kind of like you. I'm not as nerdy, but I am. Black Lives Matter. I've seen neighbors post stuff. Some neighbor put new signs up. Black Lives Matter says, all lives don't matter until Black Lives Matter. So I took it a step further. Okay, I had heard that there's Marxist underpinnings to the leadership. Okay, and I'm a guy that sounds probably right, but I'm going to verify that. I actually watched, when I forget her name is, one of the two co-founders of it actually admitted they have strong Marxist underpinnings. So there you have it. I went to their website. The Black Lives Matter website does not mention their Marxist affiliation, I think probably from a PR standpoint, but the core of BLM is Marxist in its theory, its practice, and Marxism is strongly atheistic too. You have to. I'm reading a new primer on Marx. Marx was an atheist hardcore.
Oh yeah.
So we need to understand that I'm not against Black lives, but all lives matter. Okay, I don't care if you're black, yellow, green, what have you, all lives matter. And as a Christian, that's what scripture teaches. All lives matter to God. But when your organization has Marxist underpinnings, that should scare you. And they don't publicize this, but in fact, they are. There you go.
I'll take that one step further. And anybody can go and do the research and come up with the interview.
Yeah.
What she said, quote, they are trained Marxists.
Marxists, yep.
Trained Marxists.
Yep.
So you don't have to, be real smart these days to figure out who is in the world is training Marxists. Where did they go to get their training? Okay. And there's a big investigation going on right now, because this is an extremely well-funded organization. A lot of this comes from public people donating money, well-meaning, good-hearted. I was in downtown Seattle on Capitol Hill yesterday as I'm leaving a business meeting. I'm looking across the street. I'm getting a real uneasy feeling because things were building in Seattle last night. You can feel it on the street when you're down there. Okay? The word is obviously up. There's a group on the street corners right there in the hospital area they call it Capitol Hill. And this was a group of probably 20 or so 80-plus-year-old. There was one guy, mostly women, carrying Black Lives Matter. There was not any other race there except obviously Caucasian white women, 80, 85 years old, and they're on the street corners with their BLM. I think there's well-meaning people behind this, okay, that are involved in this. They think that this is about the oppression of African Americans in the systemic oppression of African Americans. If you look at the BLM website, look in their about section, look at what we believe.
I looked at
to the bottom. And I'm suggesting, I know you've done this. Yep. It states there very clearly that they are there to disrupt the nuclear family and to replace what they call a heteronormative society. Okay, it's cisgender society is the term they use. With queer, their words, queer affirming villages to raise children in.
Okay. So Val, and I have to comment here because I'm going back, it's been a while since I've really read anything of Marx, but one of the core tenets of Marxism is the dissolution of the family. So all organized religion, government, dissolution of the family, that is a core Marxist principle.
So they're burning down the cities, and this is this racial situation they have picked specifically. What we believe, that section down there at the bottom, okay, where it really talks about their core values. I don't really believe. The only thing that I remember racial in there is that they are there to specifically support Black trans women who have been disproportionately discriminated against. Black trans women. I mean, of all of the groups, in the United States or in the world that I can think of that possibly have, stand out, that's got to be a really, really small number of people, Black trans women. So I'm thinking there's something in the life of the founders that's coming through in this. Okay, this racial situation has been hijacked by a Marxist group, and there's a big investigation going on right now. There's going to be a lot more that's going to come out about this because these folks have been flying from one city to the other city to the other city in advance to organize these riots and protests. This is a military assault. They're very well funded, very well organized, and I just happen to know the Department of Justice is investigating this right now. How is all this? Who's organizing all of this stuff? Who's organizing these flights? Who are these people that are? Because it's been proven. We know that. So let's talk about some of the economic fallout of all of this, because bottom line, we talk about these things and we rant and rave about them, but it's really the economic and the business side of this, because I mentioned to you a little while ago, my experience right now is that it's like a line drawn through society, and everybody on this side is out of work and not coming back to work. And on this side, we've got booming business that you can't even find enough qualified people to keep up with. So let's talk about some of what's going on. What causes that, do you think?
Well, I want to start. I'll call it economics 101, and then I'm gonna just, with time constraints here, I'm gonna jump in and give some quick statistics on the airline industry, Val, and then I'll kind of let you wrap up or provide feedback. But guys, we got to realize what's happening with inflation. I can go back 6 months, and if you remember, you probably don't, because a lot of these numbers that we hear or see in the news just go by. It's like the Dow Jones average. The Dow Jones was up today. What does that mean to the average person? Absolutely nothing. Okay. The Fed back in March injected $700 billion. $700 billion. That used to be a lot of money, kind of being facetious here, in what they called renewed quantitative easing. Let me translate that for you. Quantitative easing is a nice term, academic term, sounds like a lot. We just printed a bunch of new money. When I want to tell you that, we call it quantitative easing. We just printed a bunch of new money. And here's the bottom line of all this, and I've got a brief point here. By announcing, and this is from Robert Murphy, an economist who I saw several years ago, well-educated, great economist, by announcing that it's willing to throw $1.5 trillion in electronically created money in order to give 3-month loans to those institutions that have bought treasury debt, the Fed is bailing out not only the holders of treasury debt, but also the treasury itself. Remember, I talked about government self-interest. If it happens to benefit us, great, but it's about the Fed itself, all the big world banks, the IMF, all this, that's who they're trying to care. The Fed is ensuring a healthy demand, and now in the perceived future for treasury, since now private bond dealers don't have to worry about a sudden change in liquidity for their assets. So this wasn't done, but folks, when the Fed injects that kind of money, they can call it quantitative easing. That is what inflation is. Most people, if you ask them what's inflation, they have no idea. Most economic classes you take, they misunderstand inflation. Inflation is only and solely a byproduct of our Federal Reserve, which, by the way, is not, nobody there is elected. It's not a constitutionally mandated organization. It's arguably probably the most powerful organization in the world, even beyond the president, because they are controlling an economy in the U.S. of, I don't know the exact number we do, trillions of dollars, but 330 million people, and they're accountable to no one. When the Fed prints money, that is what creates inflation. We've been off the gold standard. Finally, it started in Bretton Woods in 1946, if I'm remembering. Nixon severed the final ties to the gold standard, which said you had to hold an equal amount of gold to the amount of money in supply, and that's been gone away with. So now the Fed can, quote, inflate. They can print as much money as they want when they want. So when the Fed prints money, that's what creates inflation. If you look at Kiplinger's letter, which I glanced at this morning, and I was just goggled, they're saying the inflation rate, they're saying about 1.1%. I saw numbers about 2.3%. And they're saying, you know, the auto rates went back up, medical costs a little bit. That was inflation. Guys, that's a misnomer. Price inflation is not true inflation. Okay? Inflation is when the Fed dilutes our money supply by printing money. If we had printing machines in our basements or homes, we'd never have a problem. But the problem is the more money in the supply, and this gets into M1, M2, and all that, the lower the dollar. You have more money out there, it loses its value. That is what inflation is. It's not when the prices go up. That's a result of something. But Kiplinger's didn't talk about what caused this. But here's the interesting fact here. If this is from Business Insider, okay, because guys, the inflation rate's not, Kiplinger is saying for 2020, the inflation rate is going to be 1.1%. No, I'm sorry. That's just it. That's absurdly low. 2.3%. No. And you want to know why? If people knew the actual inflation rate, it would implode the entire system. And I'm only going to give you a couple examples here, but our real world experience, according to Business Insider, says that the inflation rate doesn't reflect the actual cost increases of everything from burritos to healthcare. They have a burrito index, which is totally interesting. I'm not going to go into it. But here's the bottom line, guys. Looking at numbers, they're saying we're probably more realistically, which I believe from my own experience, probably in the 7% to 13% inflation. Now, I'm only going to give one example. They said the grim reality is real inflation is probably 7+% per year. I agree with that. Here's the problem. Number one, I'm going to stop at this. Social Security beneficiaries, right? We've all heard about that. It's basically an underfunded trust fund. Okay. Me and Val are in the age group where, yeah, I kind of hope it survives so I get my cut of what I've paid into over years. But if Social Security beneficiaries would demand annual increases of 7+% instead of near zero annual increases, the system would immediately go deep into the red. So if the government tells you, oh, the inflation rate is only 1.1, there's no impetus on all the retirees, retirement age people to demand that they increase cost of living increase for Social Security. So, and I'm going to leave it at that, guys, but just the numbers that we get are artificially low, because if we really knew the true numbers, we would be shocked. So, go ahead.
You mentioned a couple of things there, and I want to give a couple of examples and throw some things out so that people can relate to this. And that's brilliant, Brad. You're exactly 100% correct. First off, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, they say the stock market went up. What does that mean? The Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, these are sample baskets of companies that they index, that they say, okay, these are the companies that we're going to measure. Now, the issue with this, and right or wrong, is that over the course of history, they've changed those companies. And the reason they do that, which makes sense, is to try and reflect what's actually there. In other words, if they used the same index that they did in 1960, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they wouldn't be in it, right? It'd be companies that aren't really relevant anymore.
Or that don't exist anymore.
Or there are some that don't exist. So we understand that. But just understand, the same thing happens on the side of the inflation numbers. Theoretically, what they do is they've got this shopping basket, and it has to do with commodities. And they've got this shopping basket that's supposed to be a standard that then they can measure off of, except we've always known that they change the items. It's like when you go to the grocery store, you go and look at something and you go, yeah, baby, we aren't buying steak this week. It's $20 a pound. By the way, have you bought steak lately? I quit eating beef and steak a long time ago. It's like, I can't, it would upset my digestion to pay, whatever, $50 for a couple of steaks.
Go to Omaha. It's really cheap there. I'm not kidding you.
Oh, yeah. So, you go over to Eastern Washington and buy it on the hoof too. Yeah. But my point being is, when you go through the grocery store, you look at things and you say, yeah, for some reason the price is up on that this week. We're not buying that. We're shifting to this other thing, right? We're not going to eat that this week. We're going to eat something else. Well, they kind of do the same thing with this shopping basket. So there is a little bit of a baked-in suspicion about how they do this, because the government, especially in an election year, everything is affected by this. Everything we're going on, all of the riots and the unrest. You think that this stuff would be happening if it was a year from now in terms of the election process? Not so much. They're taking advantage of everything that's happening to
incidental.
They've been planning this stuff for years. So there's that. Now, inflation. I'm going to give you an illustration of everybody of how inflation works. I always thought the word inflation was kind of an interesting term, because everything goes up, the price goes up. But what's actually happening is the value of the goods is going down, the value of the purchasing power of the dollar. So let's relate this to a Monopoly game. Well, most people have played Monopoly. The properties cost a certain amount of money, right? And you've got a certain amount of cash in the game. Well, inflation, what the government does is they come and they say, we need to put more money in the game. And then so they just take two Monopoly games and put them together, the money. Now we've doubled the money supply there, but the effect of that, what happens is, because the property doesn't double, the property is the same. Now the price of that piece of property goes from 200 to 400. And so everybody, you know, the purchasing power, you doubled the amount of money, but the purchasing power actually became half. Is that an accurate illustration?
You can read the book, What Has Government Done to Our Money? I think that's by Murray Rothbard. But yeah, they've diluted the purchasing power of our money.
And if you want to see a little bit more about how the monetary system works in the Fed, there's a book called The Debt Virus. Jacques Jacarin or something like that. He was actually worked for the Fed, and he exposes the whole debt-based monetary system, the fractional reserve system. So it's a phenomenal book. I really opened my eyes on how that whole system works. So what we've got right now is we've got certain industries that are booming. And part of this has to do with the way money is getting directed, right? The government is managing parts of the economy by saying, we're going to give grants and we're going to fund and we're going to push money into this businesses in this area. The other thing that's happening, though, is that the stock market's going crazy. It's booming. Everybody's saying, hey, the net worth of consumers, average Joe and Mary, the net worth of the consumers in the United States in the last 6 months now has increased $12 trillion. That's a big number. But the truth of the matter is the government has spent into the economy $10+ trillion. The stock market is speculative. It's like gambling.
And Val, what I didn't mention, I forgot, is when that government in March injected $700 billion into the economy, guess what the stock market did? It dropped 1,000 points. The stock market's going, that's not good. Now it's gone back up, but it didn't get unnoticed. But that was attributed, they never really attributed, well, why did the market drop? Well, because the Fed basically ran off their printing presses and put $700 billion in the market to buy Social Security, Treasury bills, etc. The market's saying, nah, we don't like that.
I'll tell you what happens, and this cracks me up in a sick way. What happens is the government comes out and pumps in the last year. Accurate. I'm trying to be accurate here. 21 trillion to about 28 now. So $7 trillion. Just
a big number.
It's just electronic. They just go in and tell the Fed, hey, and this is a private corporation, the Fed. We've talked about this in past weeks, so I want to get it. Hey, we want to borrow $7 trillion and spend that in the economy because of COVID, right? Because people got a 1 in 19 million chance of dying from this. So we need to borrow. We need to force Brad and Val and everybody listening to this. We need to force these people to borrow money to pump into the system because of this emergency we created. There's nothing about this that's natural. They governments made that the event. So they spend that money in, but now it gets pumped out and it goes out to people and they pay their mortgages and all that kind of stuff. It gets consumed, right?
Yeah.
Now, as the money goes through the system, where's it going to end up? People say, well, where did the money go? Because it's not like, for the most part, people bought a house. What happened was people maybe paid down a credit card. That went to a bank. The banks loan the money to the government. The government spends it in. The money goes back to the bank. The banks take it back out of the system. But what remains, Brad? The debt.
Debt doesn't go away. It keeps, that's where your national debt keeps going up.
And where does a big bunch of that money go? Where are you going to put the money? You're going to put it into savings? You could put it in your savings account at 0 interest? You're going to buy a city bond at nothing interest, no return? What are you going to do with this? It's not like they gave you, $300,000, you can buy a piece of property. They gave everybody $1,200, just about. So what we need to do with this? Well, you spend it on stuff. And eventually this money gets into the stock market. It's the only place institutionally. So eventually this money gets accumulated into various institutions, which theoretically does benefit Joe and Mary Lunch Bucket, because most of the people that own those 401ks and the mutual funds, the money gets deposited into there. Where are those institutions going to spend it? They're going to put it into the stock market. It's the only place to go. They're not going to buy gold. Gold is going up, but that's mostly individuals. Bitcoin's going up, but that's because people are a little afraid because the stock market's got a $7 trillion bubble right now. I don't know how else you describe it. It was money spent into debt money spent in that goes in, it ends up going into the stock market. And they say, well, the net worth of the average the consumers in the United States is up $12 trillion. A big chunk of that speculation, people buying stocks probably at more than what they're worth. Hey, do you really think Tesla's the net worth of Tesla? Or there's a stock out there that people are gobbling up like crazy called Nikola. They haven't made a product yet. It's one of the hottest stocks.
Well, Tesla, though, I got a lot to say good about Elon Musk and that, and I think he's getting there, but they have a large amount of debt.
I'm just saying, some of these companies. What was one? Zoom is worth more than IBM right now. People think IBM. Who's buying those computers? No, IBM owns real estate. They have massive real estate holdings. So anytime you've got a stock company of Zoom, which there's no asset value, there is no asset. What do they own?
Service.
It is a service business, but it's the speculation of future earning power that people and leading there, and they're putting money in it. It is a gambling machine. It is a big gamble.
Are they really worth that? Well, they think they are. The market thinks maybe they are, but the market's not always right in those situations. It's speculative, it might, but what if it doesn't?
When Boeing issues bonds, or when Boeing, does something, just as an example, they take that money, they go and they buy a piece of property, build a building, and build airplanes. Zoom or whatever doesn't necessarily do that, although theoretically some of those companies now, they'll buy property, they'll own some property because they got to have someplace to put their employees and do stuff. But the biggest part of this is speculation. So when you take that statement that the net worth of the consumers of $12 trillion, well, do you offset that against the fact that the consumers borrowed 7 or 8 trillion? And how much of that, what happens when some new technology comes along? Zoom is awesome, but honestly, we're on StreamYard right now. We quit using Zoom for streaming, and Microsoft Teams and other things are coming along. They looked at Zoom and they said, that's good stuff. People are really using that a lot now. COVID, everybody's shifted. And boy, we're kind of running out of time here. We could go another hour talking about the economic stuff.
Yeah, we'll cover that next week. But yeah, Val, what happens on these is some of these companies, they may be riding the wave like Zoom. All of a sudden, everybody was on Zoom. We've been using it for a year plus, right? All of a sudden, everybody from schools to business to everybody's using Zoom. Zoom's thinking, hey, wow, look where we're going. But they may not be paying attention that guess what? You have competition.
Yeah.
And they may out-compete you and come up with a better platform. Because we've run into a number of problems with Zoom. They wanted an astronomical amount of money to do a free streaming service for our business team. And we're going, we can do it like through StreamYard or something else. So what happens, a lot of these companies are speculating, but they're not taking into account there's a lot of other companies that are bigger players that might say, hey, we can do this better, and you better watch out for the competition.
And all of these niche companies do things slightly different. I mean, Zoom really has more competition from maybe Microsoft Teams in terms of team meetings, of conferencing, video conferencing. But Microsoft Teams, at least the last time I checked, which was a couple of months ago. Admittedly, they're constantly developing, but they don't really stream onto social media, or not very well anyway. So Zoom was better there, but now StreamYard for streaming onto social media is so much better than Zoom, far better. So now everybody who's doing these kinds of functions, they're migrating away from Zoom over into the next thing. So it's a constantly moving thing, and yet the stock is volatile. It's moving around. It's projecting this stuff, and all I can say is it didn't take much, did it, to drop? How many trillion did the market drop? I mean, it went
bull market to a bear market overnight.
Yeah, one farce of a virus that the government created, blew out of proportion, damaged, whatever. The stock market dropped from, I want to say, about 28,000 down to about 19 at its lowest point.
It's a huge drop. It's gone back up. It's about.
And it goes back up. But the point we're making here is it didn't take much to totally disrupt that market. Where's the value? It's just emotion. It's speculation, right? Because are you telling me that the properties that those companies had and the employees and all that stuff automatically went down by a third? No, the buildings are still there. Everything's there. Much of the stock market is just speculation.
Right, hence overvalue the market if left, and I'm a free market believer that the market will correct, and that's why the Austrian business theory says that economic theory says there are natural ebbs and flows, business cycles. It's a natural thing. The market needs to correct itself, but when the Fed steps in and says, "Oh, we're going to put $700 billion in the economy, no big deal," they cause distortions and misallocations in the market that have far-reaching consequences beyond that initial action. If you would have just left the market on its own, which up until Hoover and FDR, pretty much the government let the market correct itself, and our recessions and depressions were much shorter because there are natural corrections of the market. The government says, "Oh, we're having this correction. We need to put money in the market." Guys, the government cannot create jobs. That's why when I hear politicians and all this, or governments claim we're going to create this amount of jobs. Guys, government does not create jobs. Doing what? Government can't. They consume resources. They take tax dollars from us, from businesses. Government's not business. They don't create jobs. They're not entrepreneurs like Val and I are that have to create value in the marketplace to find consumers and that. So it's a misnomer again that government can create jobs. No, that's like the Wizard of Oz. You're going to create something out of thin air? No, you can't.
Any job that the government, quote unquote, creates has to be supported by taxes coming out of the economy, diminishing the economic return, because they don't really produce a consumer product per se.
Exactly. They consume, they don't produce. Only business can create jobs. So if you let business, leave it alone, let it do what it needs to do, those are real jobs. So I don't believe government job numbers, because they're meaningless.
The most insidious part of that conversation is the fact that these jobs that become part of government institutions, in every case, are paid far more than the market rate out there in industry for the same position, far more. And they take money out of the paychecks of those government employees because they're now part of public employee unions, and they redirect those almost totally back through the Democratic Party, who are mostly who's running the state legislatures and the city governments, who grant those same people benefits and rights that normal industry doesn't get, because normal industry is competing and they don't. And this is literally destroying states and cities.
I have to say this. I'm not going to mention it. It's a friend of mine, works for Metro, and took leave of absence in, I don't know, February, March with the COVID thing. They've still been receiving a paycheck. They didn't have to work from home, and is going to get another $20,000. His retirement age is going to get $20,000 to retire. wait a minute, you've been off of work for 5 months, you haven't done any work, you haven't driven any, I'm sorry, I hope he never sees this. But it burns my butt. You've done nothing for 5 months and they're still sending you a paycheck. You're not working from home, okay? You're gonna get another $20,000 to retire. You're already retirement age and you've got your county pension.